All right, guys, we should be up. All right. All right, guys, we are up. So just give me a couple minutes to take care of some stuff here, and we'll get the ball rolling with the countdown. Dan, are you going to share it to the group? Because I don't want to double up if needed.
Yeah, I'm going to share to Micallef ambassadors and on our Micallef page if I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
You should be able to. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're going to get started here just momentarily. Just got to cover a couple more things here. And we will get it done. So one more second here. All right, guys. Okay. I thought you said your family was asleep, Andy. Renee just popped in. Renee, I felt bad for taking him from you tonight. He told me not to worry about it.
She's all right. She's in the other room watching.
All right.
The rest of the family is asleep. Renee wanted to watch.
Awesome. Good to have her on. All right. Well, guys, I'm ready if you all are.
I'm ready to go.
All right. So I'm going to do a countdown, and we'll go ahead and get started here. Okay. All right. Let me make sure we're good here. Okay. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good evening and welcome to ELOsoFumarTakes. This is our 137th take live from the HF Barcelona studios of Euless, Texas. I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be an awesome show. I'm really excited. A duo of gentlemen tonight to talk about their perspective brand. I am so excited to have these guys on. This is going to be a fantastic show. But before I get to the honor of introducing them, we do have to thank the show the show and the people that make this show possible. And that, of course, is our sponsors. And tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate announced earlier this week the 2020 release of the limited edition Liga Privada Unico Serie Pancetta, an exclusive cigar to the two Liga Privada lounges, Wooden Indian Tobacco Shop in Haventown, Pennsylvania, and Barrister Cigars in Union, New Jersey. The pancetta will be available beginning on September 25th. Yes, that's later this week, with each of these exclusive retailers will be hosting a special virtual launch event. The Liga Privada Unico Serie Pancetta is the union of two renowned Liga Privada blends, the Liga Privada T52 and the Liga Privada Unico Feral Flying Pig, featuring a Connecticut stock cut and cured Habano Kappa. This cigar starts off with a spice blast and hearty aroma, leading to the enthusiasts on a complex journey throughout Liga Landia. Yes, that's a quote. I did not make that up. To add raw might to the blend, a bold Brazilian Matafina binder and powerful filler leaves from Nicaragua and Honduras were selected. From the Wynwood Safe House, Jonathan Drew, president and founder of Drew Estate, adds, the pancetta brings us back to the early days of the Liga Privada brand mark, representing the important and brick and mortar friendships that deeply contributed to our initial success with the brand. So check out those retailers later this week as the pancetta is released. Tonight's show is also sponsored by Oveja Negra Brands, 4 unique companies who share a passion to provide innovative cigars for the next generation of cigar enthusiasts. Black Label Trading Company, Blackwork Studio, Dissident, and Emilio are combining premium tobacco with an artisanal touch. Oveja Negra, where art and tobacco collide. Join the flock and visit ovejanegracigars.com to learn more. And welcome back to our 137th take. I am so excited to welcome you all in. And so without further ado, tonight's guest, sponsored by United Cigars. Smoke one today and start living united. Misters Dan Thompson, Andy Yaffee of Micallef Cigars. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
I am doing fantastic, Bear. I'll tell you what, if that introduction doesn't get you going and pumped up for this show, I don't know what will.
Oh, I thought you'd already be
now.
excited after the Dallas Cowboy game, man.
I am super excited, but that game actually took a lot out of me, to be honest. I've had to rest up to get ready for the show since then. But your introduction, I got all the energy in the world now. I'm happy to be here, Bear. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you, Andy. I'm really excited that you were able to join us tonight, especially with it being so late. I know you're on the East Coast. I finally wrangled our other guest into actually watching an entire show now, just make him a part of it. And so Dan Thompson, president, of course, of Micallef Cigars. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Bear, I'm doing great. It's fantastic to be here with you. I did prepare for the long run tonight. I'm excited to be here with you, and we are just so happy to have our ambassadors join and watch your show with us tonight. So thank you for hosting Micallef Cigars.
Oh, it's my pleasure, gentlemen. This is something that's been kind of in the works for a while now, and it's a little it's a better late than never. You guys afforded me the opportunity and privilege of being on y'all's show Off the Record, which we'll get into later, of course, during tonight's show. But it's long overdue, and I'm pleased to have you guys both on. So, Andy, I'll start with you. Let's start with the obligatories here. I mean, what are we lighting up for tonight's festivities?
So I thought I would go with what Dan has featured in the background there at the office, and that is the new Micallef A. You got one too, Bear. Are you going to be lighting that up with us as well?
It depends on how long we go tonight, but I'm fully prepared to. I'm fully prepared to light it up for sure.
Gotcha. Well, it's definitely one of my favorites and one of my go-tos, and it's a fan favorite for sure.
Dan, what about yourself?
Bear, I'm celebrating with the Micallef A, just like in the background. We built it in honor of the ambassadors. It's a beautiful cigar. We're going to wait for your feedback when you light it up, but I have cigars in reserve. So if we want to go late tonight, we can play all night long.
Well, fantastic. Well, gentlemen, I lit up one of my favorite cigars. He was actually, it was one of my honorable mentions of 2019, the Micallef Experiencia La Crema. And I absolutely dig this cigar. It's sensational. It is, there's just really great balance to the cigar. And I love the temperature of the smoke. I really like a cigar that produces a really nice, cool smoke to it, where you don't ever get burned out. Like when you get to the finish of the cigar, it doesn't heat up. When you have a cigar experience like that, where because like we all have that, we're smoking a great cigar, and they tend to get hot at the end. They tend to get bitter. It's the nature of physics and chemistry, right? But this cigar doesn't do that. It's what I absolutely love about it. It's sensational. It's one of the favorites that out of your portfolio right at the gate for me, and I continue to enjoy it to this day. So that's what I decided to start tonight with.
Thank you, Bear, for all the kind words on that cigar. That was one of our first, most popular cigars. So thank you for enjoying that tonight.
Oh, absolutely. Uh, well, I wanted to kind of warm things up this evening. So, guys, you guys agreed to be on tonight's show, and we've already kind of pointed out and had a little bit of fun before the official countdown. Andy has family in town, and I felt bad for taking him away from family, but he's like, oh, they're in bed and everything. But one of the people of our next segment, subject of our next segment, is actually tuning in tonight, and that's our wives. So I ran an ad for tonight's show, promoting tonight's show, and I featured photos of all three of us with our better halves. And Dan, I don't know your wife, but I know you, and I automatically know she's your better half. And I've had the privilege of meeting Renee a few times, and I know for a fact, undoubtedly, she is Andy's better half, and certainly my wife is my better half. So. But the reason I thought this would be an interesting subject is there are some tremendous and amazing women in this industry that play a prominent role in companies and brands and so forth. And it's it's awesome to see. But I wanted to kick off tonight's show talking about kind of the unsung heroes in this industry, and those are the partners, the silent partners that are behind us and support everything that we do. It's particularly for you two gentlemen, getting on a computer late at night and talking to some guy who wants to talk to you about cigars and into the wee hours of Monday morning. I mean, just you gotta have some amazing partners to partner with that. So I wanted to take the moment to let you kind of put a spotlight on your better halves, and I'll certainly thank mine as well. But Dan, I'll just kick off with you.
Bear,
What does she think about all this?
Bear, we just celebrated our 14th anniversary. My wife's name, I call her Birdie, so it's Birdie Thompson. We met at Microsoft where we were both there together, and she knew that life had a lot of long hours in it. She was incredibly excited when I joined the Micallef family working in Micallef Cigars. But if it wasn't for her, our home wouldn't run right. We've got a bunch of dogs that we've been raising. She's just the other part of me. And I'm thankful that she puts up with the crazy hours and the fun things that we do. But she's loving my life, and we're heading towards 15 years.
Congratulations on that. I just celebrated 10 this year. What a heck of a year to celebrate your 10th anniversary of marriage, for sure. But but we had some. It was certainly memorable, that's for sure. But Andy, what about you and Renee? What does she think about all this madness that you involve yourself with and have for the last few years now?
So yeah, so she's been in it with me. We actually are about to celebrate our 8th anniversary. I got married in 2012, but we've actually been together since we were in freshmen in college. So it's been a while. I think we're coming up on something like 18 years or something together as a couple. But by now she's used to the cigar life because I've been in this for about almost 7 years now. It's amazing to me because it's not just, Renee is beyond supportive and everything like that, but these reps that have these wives that put up with them traveling 5, 6, 7 days a week, never really being home, staying in hotels all the time, and being able to have like this, close phone relationship at some point. Sometimes, there's certain days where I don't even really talk to her other than text, but she's always there when I get home, waiting for me with a smile, always very supportive of what I do, and always telling me she's proud. But as far as Micallef is concerned, I think this is one of her favorites because she has become very active with our ambassador group, actually. And the ambassadors are very active with her. She's been very like tonight, she's been very talkative on our shows. She's been watching all the shows, and now the ambassadors are even inviting her on their shows and then their little Zoom herfs that they're doing on a regular basis. And it's just so funny. Like sometimes I'll come home and she'll know more about what's going on in the ambassador group than I do.
Oh,
Like
that's awesome.
she has to tell me what's going on in the ambassador group sometimes, and I'm like, really? And I was like, and then I look it up and I'm like, man, I missed that today. And it's like having an extra set of eyes when it comes to handling that other group and our fans and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, she's always been extremely supportive, and I'm very fortunate to have someone that is willing to put up with my lifestyle and my craziness that I have going on in this industry. So couldn't be happier, and I hope she's just as happy.
Well, speaking of happiness, one of our viewers tonight, Orlando Perez, is celebrating a little bit something different. Orlando, thanks for bringing it down. He's celebrating 24 years of being divorced. So, I mean, whatever tips your boat, I suppose. But we're gonna focus on our better halves. But Orlando, if you're happy, we're happy for you, buddy. So, cheers to you.
Hey, Bear.
Yeah.
We've got to tell you that Orlando likes to hear his name, and he'll tell us that in just a minute, that he's a self-described attention whore. So every time you see Orlando, it plays into his lifestyle. So,
well, perfect. Well, I'm glad I could play into exactly what he likes to bring him into the show tonight. So, but that's really awesome that Renee is kind of taken up, your cause. I mean, for lack of a better term, Andy, like really kind of really taking that support to the next level and everything. My wife is, and I've actually smoked a cigar with you and Renee, Andy. So I know she enjoys the occasional cigar, maybe not as much as the three of us, but she certainly does. And that's really terrific. My wife is not a cigar smoker. She supports me in a lot of other different ways. And Dan, and unless I'm remiss, Bertie doesn't really partake very often either, correct?
Yeah, Birdie's not as active. She really runs our house for us, and she's got her set of friends and participates and supports me in the background, helps me be successful. That's kind of the role that we've kind of determined for us and our family.
That's wonderful. Like I said, congratulations on 14 years. Just really excited for you guys to be celebrating that, and hopefully the 15th anniversary, which is a milestone for sure, will actually be celebrated in a climate that's not so, I guess, contentious. Let's just put it that way. Hopefully your 15th is a lot better than my 10th. Let's just put it that way.
Well, so, we're just going to be delighted to make it, and kind of have a different story than Andy. Andy and Renee were together for a very long time. My wife and I have been married 14 years, and we have been together for maybe 14 years and 2 months. So
I remember this. Hey, when you know, Dan, you know.
And I'm happy to have her and love her to death.
It took Andy 9 years. It took me like 4.5. It's and took you, a couple weeks. It's all good. It's all good. When you know. So thanks guys for bringing in our better halves for tonight. Really want to thank all the better halves out there and all the support that they bring to us, no matter what industry you're in, and then whether it's the beloved cigar industry that we're all in, the three of us are in, or if it's the way that they support you at home in the industry that you guys are. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the wonderful better halves out there. So whoever they are and whoever you're with, congratulations to you, and may you have many, many more happy years together. So with absolutely no proper segue into the second subject after that, I just wanted to start something off a little fun. But the question that I wanted to bring you guys to kind of kick things off tonight was, Micallef's had an incredible 2020, and we're really going to get into the nuts and bolts of it here in just a few minutes. But I wanted to kick it off with a subject that is probably got glazed over because of the very nature of when it happened, and the very nature of what has happened in 2020, which is, it just seems like each day something just progressively either gets worse or something else happens that just supersedes the day before it. But the 2020 kicks off in the cigar industry with the quote unquote big four pulling out of the PCA trade show. course, Drew Estate, Davidoff, General Cigar, and Altadis decide to pull out of the trade show, which just sparks this huge debate within the premium cigar industry, consumers, retailers, manufacturers alike. And then it sparked this announcements of companies who were going and other companies that weren't going. And one of the companies that also announced that they weren't going was, of course, Micallef. You guys decided to not attend this year's PCA trade show, which eventually obviously got canceled, which we'll get into as well. But Dan, you've got an interesting story behind this.
Yeah,
so I thought I'd give you the opportunity to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year was actually my first PCA or IPCPR, and I joined Andy and the team out in Las Vegas with Al Micallef. I'd been working with Al on the board of directors since he started the company. And as we closed the show, Al and I had some conversations, and we were really kind of scratching our head and thinking, is this the format that's going to enable Micallef Cigars to grow? And we had a lot of questions about it. And some of them were questions we've heard talked about in the industry, but for us, it was just a really personal type of discussion. We thought, how do we serve the retailers in this excellent format that we like to serve them in any of the Micallef businesses? How would we do that? And the conclusion that we drew right after the trade show is that we wouldn't go in 2020. And it was really kind of an unpopular topic, even within our own team at the time, because everybody goes to the trade show. And it evolved as we thought about our strategy in the second half of last year. We were really quiet, and we just recognized that one of the luxuries we have, working for the Micallef family, is we're not pinned to some corporate quarterly calendar, but rather we can take the luxury of really focusing in on what did we need to do as an organization. And after that trade show, we recognized that we needed to build up our sales team. And that's how Andy became the national sales director. And we realized that we wanted to invest in the brick and mortars, and that the best way to do that was through the sales team that we built and the events and investments we could make in them. But just like every company, we can do anything we want, but we can't do anything all the time. And so the decision was made by the end of 2019 that we weren't going to go to PCA. And it's funny. We actually had the announcement written right at the first of the year, and it was going to go out on the day or the day before the Big Four, which we didn't know anything about. And I had some customers come to town, and it just delayed us 2 days. And so what we published, we didn't want it to just be an announcement that we weren't going, because we're a small company. We certainly want to grow and develop our friendships with our retailers and continue growing the ambassadors. But for us, we didn't want it to be against something like the trade show, but more we used it as an opportunity to lay out a strategic vision for how Micallef Cigars would operate. And so that's how we announced it. And it's really been the compass that we've run the business on.
So Andy, just to get your perspective on this, so you've been in the industry with a couple of different companies before this, La Flor Dominicana, Nat Sherman, and you've attended, since you've been in the industry, you've attended every IPCPR / now known as PCA, correct?
Yes, I think I've been to 6 of them, 4 with LFD, 1 with Nat Sherman, and 1 with Micallef.
Okay. So just to get your thought on this, when you first became, I don't know how involved you were in the discussion, the decision, the conversation, everything, but when the idea first hit you that a company that you were a part of wasn't going to be attending the trade show, did that feel weird at all? How did you internalize that?
It did feel weird. When we first made that decision, I sat there and I was like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should go. I think it's just, but I guess that was a natural reaction. It's just what companies do in this industry. Now, I'll be honest, I've seen how the trade show has changed just in the 6 years that I've attended it. And it wasn't going the way that I thought was ideal. However, when we made that decision, it just was like, hey, what do you mean we're not going? That's just what we do. And the great thing about working for Micallef and Dan and Al is they can explain it in a way to help you understand. So we sat down when I got elevated and went over the reasons why and what we were going to do instead. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I understand now. Like, that makes perfect sense for a company of our size. And like, just to make it clear, we never said that we would never go to a trade show again. Like, that was never our
Sure.
announcement. Our announcement was, hey, we're going to take this year off, and we're going to utilize that expense or that money that we would have spent at the trade show and put it back into growing this team by adding sales guys, by investing in programs that benefit the brick and mortars, like we'll get to a little later in the show. And once you start thinking about that, and once I would tell that to the team, because the team obviously had the same natural reaction as I did, and they were like, "Oh, that makes sense." It's like, okay, let's go that route, But at the end of the day, you still had that situation where it's like, okay, well, we made this promise. We said we weren't going to the show because we're going to invest the money back in the team. Now we got to deliver. And as we're going to continue this conversation, we're going to go over the ways that we have delivered, because there's still a few brick and mortar retailers out there that are like, you didn't go to PCA, like you don't care about the industry, you don't want to support the industry. No, that's not what we're doing here. We're trying to grow our company the best possible way to better serve you as a brick and mortar. So once I sat down and wrapped my head around the whole reason, it made perfect sense.
Well, anyone that kind of has that kind of still that negative connotation attached to that, you not going to the trade show, you're totally off the hook now. I mean, with the cancellation of the show. So it definitely, unfortunately, for those attending the show and the people that were attending the show, it of course is bittersweet, but for you guys, it certainly worked out. But Andy, this is my last question, just on a point you brought up there, that you were sat down and you were explained to by Dan and Al of what they were going to do. Like, from a person coming into a position when they said that they were going to be really investing specifically in your team, really building you up and building that arm of the company up. How did that make you feel as you were transitioning into this role?
It made me feel really good about the transition. To be completely honest, when we had our sales meeting, I was elevated at the sales meeting last year, and they had asked me to stay an extra day, and I stayed an extra day, and we got together in the war room, as I like to put it, where Dan is right now, and we laid out all these things we're talking about. And I sat there and I was like, okay, it made me feel extremely good about the direction that we're headed. And it made me feel extremely confident that we could deliver what we wanted to fulfill. Like, I felt really good about it, and I knew the right decision had been made.
Awesome. I said it kind of, Dan, I said it kind of tongue in cheek a second ago about, with, anyone that had like a negative connotation. I'm sure you guys got some feedback on y'all pulling out of the show, even though, like I said before, it was kind of glazed over because of, unfortunately the bigger, quote unquote, bigger story that kind of sparked everything. But I'm sure you guys got some feedback on it. But has that kind of resolved itself with the whole COVID climate and the show being canceled itself, you feel?
Yeah, Bear, as people become to understand that our strategy is to grow that sales team that works for Andy, that he's leading, and the incredible hiring that he's been doing, we've been able to build trust and confidence with those brick and mortar retailers. And, sometimes it's good when there's a bigger story that dwarfs your story, right? Honestly, it was okay that everybody was talking about the big four, because we were really underground at that time, and Andy talked about it as kind of, we explained it to him. And the last decision that was made without Andy was the one not to go to PCA. And so as we elevated Andy into his new role, now we're a leadership team from different industries. Some are kind of inside premium cigars and have a strong history there. Some are from social media and marketing. Some are I'm from the corporate world and technology. And now all of our decisions are made as a team. And so the investment's gone into Andy's team in the sales side, and it's really paid off dividends for us. And I think that the story, and as we got into COVID, it just kind of dissolved any animosity that was there. And it was our responsibility to work one-on-one with each brick and mortar. And Andy and his team have delivered on that promise.
It certainly sounds like it. So, and that really does, as opposed to my last transition, this actually perfectly segues into our tonight's major point, which of course is always sponsored and brought to you by Wood Butcher, Maine, introducing durable and attractive wooden creations to your kitchen, backyard grill, and home using native Maine wood and other exotic wood species. Wood Butcher, Maine products include butcher blocks, cutting boards, coasters, grill grade cleaners, and an ELOsoFumar favorite, the red oak cigar ashtray and cocktail coaster, which Andy is showing off right now, plus many more. The Wood Butcher Maine's team passion for food, the pine tree state, and craftsmanship of the highest quality show in absolutely every single piece. Visit woodbutchermaine.com. Yes, that's woodbutchermaine.com to explore the current collection. So that is as we kind of go into tonight's major point, which, it's kind of the obligatory, I have to ask what companies are doing during all this COVID-19 climate, and how their responses is, and situations that have come up because of the difficulty, including the cancellation of PCA and everything. But to that point, this is something that I feel, and this is me editorializing for a moment before I go into the question to kick us off tonight, gentlemen, is the fact that I believe that in a lot of ways, and it can be argued, but arguably I think that Micallef has done the most with the shitty situation that we find ourselves in with the COVID-19 climate. And we're going to certainly go over a lot of the ways that you guys have engaged not only your consumers, but your direct customer, which is the retailer. A lot of people forget about that. And how you guys have built up this team that we were just kind of been alluding to for the last few minutes and everything. So Dan, I want to take from the point that you just finished off with, that you've assembled a team with some pretty interesting backgrounds. So I want to defer back to Andy for a second. So Andy, before you got into the cigar industry, you started with La Flor Dominicana, but before that, what were you doing before you got into the premium cigar industry?
I was actually working for Hilton. I was in the hotel business, graduated from UCF with a hospitality degree, and went into hotel management, which took me from Orlando to Miami to Nashville, then out to Fort Worth. And my last stop was at a Homewood Suites in Fossil Creek, not too far from either one of you guys. And just the customer service background that I had is what, I had met John Carney with LFD in the hotel in UCF because we both graduated together. And he always, he was always a big proponent that, like, he thought customer service was a very good tool to have as a rep in this industry. And if you provide customer service, you can build that relationship, you can build the trust there. So I found it to be true. I mean, going in, I lead with customer service in all my sales calls, and it is really gained the trust of my retailers that I deal with. And I preach it to all of my staff who, one of my guys does have a hospitality background, but a couple of them, most of them don't. And I try to always tell them how important customer service is in this industry, and to lead with that, to help build the relationship, to help build the trust, then, that the sales will follow and the brand will be built. So that was my background, was coming from the Hilton world of hotels.
I always found your background perfectly fitting for the cigar industry, Andy. I knew that, of course, that you came from hospitality, but I thought that it was, again, perfectly fitting because as a part-time retailer myself, spending time in the humidor with consumers, it is a very niche hospitality role. You are catering to that nth degree that you did on a very daily basis within the hospitality industry that you came from, where you're trying to go above and beyond to really fit the specific needs of that one person, in a very concierge like style. So I always found your background interesting and very fitting for this industry. So I thought it was a perfect fit, and obviously it's suited you well.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one of our sales reps in the Chicago market, Jared Saunders, I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting him or interacting with him, Bear, but he also is from the hospitality industry. He came from the Hyatt world. So he shares a lot of the same values in customer service that I have.
Ooh,
And
Hilton and Hyatt, you guys I'm sure you guys have had a little bit of a rivalry going though, right? And
honestly, no, it's more Marriott and Hilton that have that rivalry. Hyatt's over there somewhere, but yeah, it is really, really helped me out coming into this industry, because like when I came in, I was like, man, I've never sold a cigar. I mean, I've sold hotel rooms, and you know, credit to John Carney. He said, sell your customer service skills and everything will fall into place. And I was like, all right. So I just made sure that whatever the retailer needed, I took care of it to my best ability. And I just made sure that I provided, the most proper service that I could give anybody. I have retailers tell me all the time how much they appreciate that.
I don't know if it was your first cigar as a LFD rep, but I do remember you and Renee and John coming into Micallef Tobacco. It was either shortly after, I don't know if he had officially offered you the position beforehand, but I remember the exact cigar that you smoked. Do you remember what you smoked that day that you came into Micallef? Do you have any idea? I'm kind of putting you on the spot, man.
Wow. What was it that day? I know the day you're talking about, and I cannot remember that cigar.
You came in, we said hi, and you walked into the humidor, and there was no discussion. You went up and you reached for the cigar formerly known as Mysterio.
That's correct. Yes. Yep. Okay.
And
yeah, no, I remember that, and I took pictures. I think that was before I actually started, because that was like a week before I started. And I think that was the day I went in there and I told you, and I think Tracy was there as well, because I had known both of you prior to working for LFD from visiting the store, that I was going to be coming on board. So yeah, you are correct. And I remember that now. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that night, and I was really excited for you. I mean, I had no idea about you and the Carney connection. I had no idea that this was even something you had wanted to do, and LaFleur being one of my, the reasons that I'm actually sitting in front of you two gentlemen tonight, old Jack Sandlin. Yeah, he's the prominent person in my cigar history, and my audience has been told that story about 10,000 times, so I'll spare them the 10,001 for tonight. So it was really exciting for you to just get started with them, and then like I said, it kind of led to us being here. But Dan, that kind of led to your point from a moment ago. Andy has this background. He's brought in another individual who has a similar background, but you have a really diverse team of multiple backgrounds. What was kind of leading you down, leading the witness here a little bit, but what was the principle or the ideas involved of bringing all these folks of these diverse backgrounds to make the team there at Micallef?
If you may, let me just kind of recap the team that we have now. Al Micallef started the business 4 years ago with the Gomez Sanchez family. So in terms of our blending and rolling and the products that we have today, we're super grateful for the Gomez Sanchez family and their ability to create the blends. Al Micallef brought with him Alan Davis, who's our president of Micallef SA. Alan Davis has been with Al for 40 years doing global manufacturing and sourcing around the world. So as we worked with the Gomez Sanchez family, one of the things that we could do as a Micallef company was help them with scaling up and logistics and supply chain. There's a lot of things that they're great at the blending and the crafting of the cigar, but they needed some help on the other aspects of manufacturing. And so Alan Davis, the president of Micallef SA, takes care of that. Then we brought Amanda Micallef into the business. And Amanda had been in the social media and the movie making for 20 years out in Los Angeles by herself. We were really happy to have her come back in October. And, I certainly don't want to sugarcoat it, but there have been a lot of brick and mortar retailers who previous to this year, they gave us a lot of feedback. Some of it was really good and positive that they liked our products. And some of it, they told us that we had some areas to make some improvements. And as a leadership team, we talked about making the announcement we weren't going to the show. We really galvanized our thinking about the business in a strategy memo that we released. And it was a series of promises to the retailers, and to the consumers and to the industry, because once you get your compass set, then everybody can get on the same page. And Andy's done a great job bringing people onto the bus and the sales team. But that was the first time that we were beginning to move together in an orchestrated way that was positive for our retailers and consumers and the industry. And, you know, you ask about COVID and how that played in. And while it's been difficult on all of us in terms of a business perspective and managing cash, it's been difficult, you know, for individuals as they manage the healthcare and the impact it's had all over the country in various ways. The reality is, for Micallef Cigars, it was actually an incredible opportunity where we were able to bring all the salespeople back off the road, and they were able to galvanize together as a team. You know, we had our marketing story with Amanda and Sam starting to pull together, and it was a very funny weekend. You know, there was just one Friday where everything was open, and then on a Monday, everything was closed. And I remember the conversation, you know, we normally meet as executive team on Wednesday. We met on Monday because the country had just changed in front of our eyes. And, you know, Andy and Sam came to Amanda and then to me, and they just said, hey, we're a content company right now. And we talked about what it would look like to become a content company. You know, we had some real muscle in that area with some of our various backgrounds. And, you know, I think Andy should tell the story of how they created the content and ran what we called Micallef TV internally for, I think they did like 240 or 280 hours of content in 2 months. And we wanted to focus on our ambassadors, because the theme that's incurred in our business is we're going to partner with the retailers. That's who we sell to, but we'll go direct to our consumer base through the ambassadors and drive the engagement. So it's a two-pronged approach. And with everybody being sidelined in what was a difficult time for everybody, we just thought we had to do something uplifting, you know, and Andy could share that story. And when he finishes that, then we can come back and talk about the business capabilities that got developed then too.
Yeah, it was, that whole situation was crazy, because I remember we had just hired AJ, and he flew out to Alabama, and I met him. We were going to go training, and I think it was Sunday I met up with him, and we were going to start hitting the ground running on Monday. And on Sunday, my phone was going nuts, like all these companies that were pulling their reps off the road. And I was like, oh man, maybe we should discuss this. So I know I called Dan like Sunday night, and I'm like, hey, we need to have a discussion on this tomorrow about pulling the guys off the road. And then, you know, and sure enough, that next Monday we came to the conclusion that, you know, the next day, hey, yeah, we should do this. And then I had to have AJ fly home and all that other stuff. But yeah, what Dan was saying is, like, we realized that, you know, we had no idea how long we were going to be off the road. And we knew that we had the ability, especially with the ambassador group, to provide a lot of content to help us grow with all this, you know, time we're going to have at home now. So it all started with and I'm going to give the credit to Sam. Sam had this idea because the March Madness basketball tournament had just been canceled. And Sam was, you know, it was a real bummer. I'm a big March Madness guy. Bear, do you watch March Madness?
Of course.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
March, April is like my favorite time of year for sports, man. Baseball starts, yeah. March Madness, the Masters, the Kentucky Derby's on the horizon. I mean, it's beautiful. March to May, the beginning of May is the best.
It's awesome
in this country.
Yeah, so we're you know, we're all pretty bummed because, I mean, all that stuff was canceled, Bear, like all of it basically.
Yeah.
And so Sam's like, why don't we do this thing called Micallef Madness, where we take our top, you know, 32 SKUs as far as selling is concerned, like our best sellers, put them on a bracket, have the ambassadors vote on them, and have matchups go day by day, and see who comes out as the ultimate winner and the favorite of Micallef Cigars. And I was like, dude, you know, we all thought this was a great idea. And I told Sam, I was like, hey, you know, what we could do is every morning we could have something called Cigar Center, where we get live with the ambassadors and we go over the previous day's matchups, who won, and then we highlight the next matchup that's coming on board. So we're like, you know, that's coming up that day. So the first show was born. We're like, yeah, we're going to do Cigar Center. We put everything on this on this bracket situation, and we're like, okay, this is going to provide easily 3 weeks of content, because we, did one game a day, and then it became 2 games a day, and then, it all followed through, and we had a blast doing it. So we're like, okay, so we got Cigar Center in the morning, and then we're like, what are we going to do the rest of the day? So we all put our heads together, and we're like, okay, in the afternoon, we need to do a show. Let's call it the Ambassador Roundtable. Well, what are we going to do with the Ambassador Roundtable? Well, why don't we interview retailers of this country that are also forced to, shut down or go curbside or change the way they're doing business? Let's interview them, give them some limelight, make them feel, special that we have them on this show or whatever. And we got this ambassador group, that can learn a little bit about the store, and this store can learn a little bit about a Micallef and the ambassador group. So, and then on top of that, we could also, once or twice a week, bring in ambassadors themselves and interview them and get to know them. So we, there we go, boom, another show. So we had Cigar Center in the morning, then in the afternoon we got Ambassador Roundtable, and then Dan's got this great idea. He's like, why don't we do a night show where we interview people in the industry, somewhat like what you do or what Coop does, and play it for our ambassadors. I mean, our ambassadors, we're kidding ourselves if they only smoke Micallef cigars. Why don't we, well, some of them are crazy enough that they only smoke Micallef cigars, but we're like, a majority of them probably smoke other things. So like, why don't we feature and showcase other brands and other industry leaders in a show called Off the Record? We'll make it fun. Well, hence the word off the record. We'll ask them some silly questions here and there. We do the rapid pace questions and ask them personal hobbies and this and that. It's all off the record. So we started inviting guys who, these industry leaders are also sitting, most of them are sitting at home. They're not traveling right now. They got time on their hands to come on our show. So we brought them on and we showcased them. And we didn't make that segment about Micallef cigars. We made that segment about whoever was on the show. I mean, Bear, you were on the show with us. That segment was about Bear, and it was about ELOsoFumar. It was about your show. It wasn't about Micallef. And our ambassadors freaking loved it. They got to learn different companies that are out there, and they got to learn about different cigar media. And I mean, it was fantastic. So boom, we got 3 shows here. Now the challenge was, we got to do this 5 days a week for as long as this goes. And we're like, okay, this is going to be a month-long thing. We can do this for a month. We got the energy to do it. And then it turned into
the energy, got the time.
It turned into 2.5 months. So like we ran, after Micallef Madness was over, that was a lot of fun, by the way. It's like, oh wait, we're still in a lockdown and there's no end in sight. Like, we need to think of something else. So we came up with another show in the morning where, every day we did a cigar seminar on one of our blends. And we're like, okay, that'll buy us another 3 weeks. Like, every day we'll do a cigar seminar. We'll feature one of our blends. We had 16 blends at the time. Let's talk about each blend each day. I think we threw in the Leanda SE in there, so it made it 17. So that provided another 3 weeks of content. And then that was over and we were still locked down. But, at least by that point, the end was in sight. We were able to power through the rest. But the feedback that we got from those shows, that I received from retailers, that we received from ambassadors, that I received from industry leaders that we interviewed, was just over the moon. Like, it was so fantastic. After a few weeks of doing it 5 days a week, Sam and I were we pretty much became professionals at doing it, and the team became really good at it because we had, the reps featured every day here and there and on one of the shows. And we really got into a rhythm and a routine, and it really one thing is, it really strengthened us as a team, doing those shows together and communicating on a daily basis with having a little fun. And the feedback, like I said, from all facets was just amazing. I mean, the industry leaders were like, you're interviewing me to your consumers? Like, what? This doesn't make any sense. It's like, that's, our consumers want to know about you. Like, the ambassadors want to know about Mike Bellody and Kurt Kendall and Pete Johnson and whoever else we had on.
Hey, Andy,
it was a lot of fun.
Andy, I'd like to take a minute and brag on you. And, Bear, Andy has really highlighted the fun side of being off on COVID. But as a team, we were able to accomplish something that when everybody's on the road, we would never be able to. And there was a lot of training that was done with our sales team. You know, there's a not sexy side of the business where you're managing a sales pipeline. How does that work? You know, there's business capabilities that we needed to build in the background so we could do things like ultimate inventory. And then there were items like, okay, we're not going to the show. There may be a show. How do we begin to build a sales program that fits today's client? So Andy and his team did an amazing job, but in the background, Andy and Sam and Amanda were working hard on a series of business capabilities and training the sales team so that they could be great at kind of the hygiene of running a sales organization.
Certainly a lot to unpack. I mean, you guys delivered quite a bit, as Andy.
Uh-oh.
Andy, it may be you and I for just a minute.
I wonder if, are we still live? I think we are.
Yeah, we are. So we'll let Bear come back. We'll use this as a break to laugh about how hard we worked while we were quote unquote under lockdown.
Honestly, everybody who's watching, this was planned. Dan and I really wanted to just take over the show and run it for ourselves. So no, I'm kidding.
So, Andy, while we were doing that, it appears that Bear's out and he'll be back in a minute. While we were doing Off the Record, you interviewed a lot of different people from around the industry. Who was your favorite interview as we went across the industry?
So the one that sticks out, Dan, was definitely Mike Bellody.
Yeah, you got to share the magic moments.
Oh man, so Mike Bellody, he was a great interview anyways, but the thing that sticks out the most about all of our interviews was the fact that he was drinking a Manhattan, and we're sitting there, and the Manhattan, like he had like two of them already. Like I saw him down one, and then he has a second one, and he's downing that, and I was like, Mike, what are you drinking? He's like, oh, I'm drinking a Manhattan. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, how do you make your Manhattan? And he was like, well, I'm out of this one. Let me show you. So he literally took the camera over to the kitchen, brings out all his ingredients, and, poured a extremely strong Manhattan, probably a double Manhattan. And I said, Mike, is that what the other two were like? And he's like, no, this is half of what the other two were like. I'm like, oh, gee. I was like, I'm surprised you were able to walk over to the kitchen. But it was hilarious to see him put together that drink on our show. That was a lot of fun. And he showed us around his house. He showed us around his bar, took us on a whole tour of his kids' playroom. It was a lot of fun. That's one that definitely stands out.
For me, one of the first ones that we did was with Will Cooper. And I don't know if you remember how it opened. I said, well, Coop, how are you doing tonight? And he got this look on his face. He goes, I feel like you've really turned the tables. I've never had a manufacturer interview me.
Yeah. That night was a challenge too, because that was the first time we ever had really Facebook issues.
Yeah, the capacity at Facebook was bad and we couldn't get in and on. You let off with Carney, I think was one of the first ones. And Carney just was like a 3-ring circus. It was fantastic.
He was hard to keep up with. Wasn't he? He was like cooking a steak while he was talking to us or something. He was grilling and he was paying attention. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all over the place. We need to revisit him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we had a lot of great guests from around the industry, many of them who I didn't know. Certainly Lafferty was fantastic when we had him on.
Yeah.
And there were just so many good moments. I enjoyed the one with Amanda, who I think she's the only one that we've hosted ourselves, or we did Jared also.
We did Jared as well. that Jared did from his car because that was a smoking lounge. Yeah, well, we did. I guess would you count interviewing Al as one of them that we hosted ourselves?
To be honest, if you interviewed Al, I totally missed it.
You were part of it. That was one of the first ones. It was me and you, Dan.
I remember it now. I remember it. You know, it's such a blur going through all of those, but they've been fun to go back and watch. You know, Charlie Minato, when he came on, you know, that's always such an interesting conversation with Charlie. It was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, one that really impressed me was when we had Casey Johnson and Dan Welsh on.
Absolutely.
Dan is extremely knowledgeable, and that was the first time I've ran into Casey several times and had several discussions with him, but I had never actually ran into Dan before and talked to him about cigars or anything. And his wealth of knowledge, I think, is underrated and overlooked in this industry. He was one of the smartest ones we had on as far as like talking about, you know, blending and tobacco and this and that. Like, it kind of blew my mind how in tune he is with it. So
yeah, absolutely. You know, I know that Bear's going to be back on with us a moment, but
okay.
I think one of the interesting things that we could share with his audience is when we're talking about some of the things that happened in the background where you were driving the great content on Micallef TV, we actually ran a program called Ultimate Inventory. And Ultimate Inventory is something, you know, that we had talked about as a leadership team, and we're going to launch later in the year. But we realized the importance of helping brick and mortars in a time when maybe they couldn't get into their shops and whatnot. Why don't you share with people kind of what the Ultimate Inventory was and the response that you had from retailers?
So the Ultimate Inventory, which we unveiled right when we were starting all this content and everything. And I remember Dan, we were, you know, spending a lot of time on 3 shows a day. And then Dan's like, well, let's roll out this Ultimate Inventory. I'm like, oh, and I was like, I don't know if I have the energy, but it actually worked out. But Ultimate Inventory was a way that we could have retailers sell anything in our portfolio without actually having it in stock. And we would then drop ship it straight to that consumer who did it. But the retailer was the one that got the sale and got the, you know, the whole money from the sale. And then we would just go ahead and bill them the wholesale cost later of whatever product they sold. But it was really key to roll it out in the beginning of COVID because a lot of retailers didn't know the future, if they could even be open, if they had to do curbside, if they, you know, could even allow people in the humidor. So it, you know, it was really fun. So we unveiled it to, you know, some of our best loyal retailers in the very beginning, and they just thought it was a fantastic idea that we were able to allow them to sell anything without even carrying it, because a lot of retailers, because of the unknown, they didn't want to carry extra inventory. They didn't know what was going to happen, but we allowed them to sell anything that we had. And then we would take care of it for them. We would ship it straight to the consumer for them. So I always made the joke. I'm like, I told a couple of my retailers, this is like, you could sell anything Micallef in your underwear if you wanted to, just as long as you had it, as long as you had a connection to your, you know, credit card processing, a Square or what have you. You could sit in bed and be like, okay, I'll take this order of Micallef, you know, Leyendas, and I'll put it in the computer. You know, 3 minutes later, they got $100-something sale, and we're shipping the product straight to that consumer. So basically, I mean, it was a way that we enabled them to sell anything, and we took a lot of the work out of their hands. They didn't have to ship it; we shipped it for them.
Yeah,
and it,
I'll just kind of conclude with it from my perspective. You know, Micallef Cigars, one of the things that Al Micallef knew that was important to him is he didn't want to be back ordered. He came out of the auto industry. And so as a company, we may be a little different than some of the other premium cigar companies that we really admire, but we bring our inventory here to our distribution center in Weatherford. And as a leader working with Andy and Amanda about how we can help brick and mortars during this time, we thought, we've got all this inventory under our feet in our humidors. Why not build this program that allowed them to do it? Andy, you did a great job of helping overcome the objections about will we steal their customer information and things like that. It was really more about how do we help you in a time of need and being able to move forward with your business with whatever restrictions were being put on it. So Bear, I see that you're back. Would you like to take control of your show?
Yeah, I think that would be really nice. No, gentlemen, thank you so much. I think this is very kismet, considering this is tonight's technical difficulties on my end is pretty much how we started our off the record show, in which I was a guest on your show. So I think it's full circle and very appropriate that this happened. So guys, thanks for picking up, just picking up my slack there, where my this technology decided to crap out on me there. But
Bear, your audience missed you while you were gone.
I see that. I see that.
There was a big drop when it was just Andy and I. Thank goodness some of the ambassadors joined us tonight, or we would have been all alone.
It's definitely it's certainly recovered though, and the two people that really love me dropped off, but they're back now, so we've got it's great. No, gentlemen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys picking it up there and everything, and I know you guys have already kind of discussed a lot of these fine points, but the couple things that I wanted to unpack. And I've seen these comments poured in, and it was the very first line that I kind of led off with as far as when we went into the segment, was that you guys really delivered. And there are tremendous companies in this industry that have done a host of incredible things, and you guys have certainly featured that in Off the Record, and it's been broadcast on many other shows, including my own, of what they're doing during this difficult time. We keep throwing the word unprecedented. So I'll throw that tagline on another thing. What you guys delivered was unprecedented. As Andy was kind of alluding to and detailing out, you guys were putting together show after show and 280 hours of content. And I remember in the heat of, in the middle of COVID, in the very beginning, like my phone was going off. It seemed like all the time, and this is going to sound like a knock, but it really isn't. And I said, you guys, I talked about this before the show, my phone was going off constantly throughout the day. Like Andy Yaffee is live on Micallef Ambassadors. Dan Thompson is live on Micallef Ambassadors. You guys were just absolutely bringing everything to your consumers and to your fans and to the industry and everything. As you were kind of like, Andy, as you were kind of, again, building this out and, coming up with show concept after show concept to bring this content, did you guys have when you guys first started, was that ever the vision, or was it just like, did it just start with that simple idea of like, how do we engage?
Bear, I'm going to answer that, and then I'll let Andy build it. But literally, when the world changed overnight, we came to the table the next Monday, and we recognized that we can move fast. We have a team that loves to do big challenges and move fast. And Andy rolled out for your audience the programming that we did. And, there were technical difficulties, and everybody was really understanding, but bring in all the industry guests. I mean, it was just an absolutely wonderful time for us as a company. And the credit really goes to Sam and to Andy and to the sales team for making it possible to allow Amanda and Alan and I to work in some other parts of our business to prepare for when they were able to get back out on the road.
Andy, before you add to that, just really curious there, you had made the comment a few moments ago that, when you were approached a lot of these industry leaders about having them like on Off the Record, and they were kind of taken aback, like, you want to interview me for your consumer base? They were kind of, I guess, weirded out was kind of is my term, not yours, but just curious, from where you sit, what was one of the best reactions that you got when you approached some of these people?
When you say best reactions, I mean, most of the guys that we approached were okay. They were willing to do it. There was never any like, nah, I'll pass, or never any, why would I do that type thing. Everybody was pretty on top of doing it.
Did that surprise you?
A little bit. There was a few guys, most of the guys that we reached out to in the beginning were people that, I was already pretty close to and comfortable with and had a good relationship with. So that made it a little bit easier to get going and to get a rhythm. And then I was able to lean on, I can't take all the credit. I mean, Brandon Luna was able to get a lot of guests on. AJ Costa was able to get a lot of guests on. Even Jared was able to get some guests on near the end there. We all came together as a team to get these people to do the show. And, once we had done a few of them, we were able to, they were able to see what we were producing and how professional it was, how organized it was. I mean, we came together with a professional script that we gave every attendee before they came on the show to make sure they were completely comfortable with what we were going to be talking about and how we were going to be doing it. And that is what actually took a lot of the guys by surprise. Many of the guys that we reached out to, it's like, oh, you want to do this show? Yeah, I'll do it. And then they think they're just coming on for a herf or something. No, we wanted to really dive into them and their company, whatever they're representing. And then we would send them this script and they'd come back and they're like, oh, this is serious. This is a serious show. You're really going to dive in here on this topic. And we're like, yeah. And so we got a lot of compliments that after, we were done with these shows, when we were talking about, winding down and going to bed or what have you, they're like, man, that was really well done. That was extremely organized. It was, somewhat scripted, but it was scripted professionally. And we provided a lot of information to our ambassadors and to anybody who was watching. And I mean, nothing but compliments on that end. And, like I said earlier, there was several guys that were like you said afterwards, like, man, thank you for doing that. Like, I never would have thought a manufacturer or a competitor would actually put this together and allow me to come on their show and talk about, my company to their consumers, like we already touched on. The reactions were all very positive.
That's terrific. So, well, it leads me into my question, and I told you guys about this question before we started tonight's show. And I was, as we were already previously mentioned, I was a guest on one of the earlier ones. So you're under no obligation to flatter the host tonight, which I don't even know if I qualify as the host anymore, considering you guys kind of took over there for a few minutes. But as I mentioned, I was a guest. But I look back on my history of 137 takes, and I've had I haven't had 137 guests, as I've mentioned before. I've had doubles and triples, and I've had multiple guests on a couple of shows like tonight. But there's always shows that I reflect back on. I'm like, damn, that was really fun. What was your favorite guest, or what was kind of some of the fun ones? And I know that you guys covered that a little bit while I was absent, but I kind of wanted just to hear it from my own ears a little bit. Like, what was one of your favorites, Andy? I know you talked about it a little bit before we went live.
Well, one of my favorites, and I had mentioned it while you're off, was the interview with Mike Bellody. The fact that he was downing Manhattens during his interview with us, and I think he had like 2 of them, and his glass was empty. And I'm like, I was like, Mike, tell us how you're making these Manhattens. And he's like, tell you. It's like, I'll show you. So he gets up, takes the camera over to his bar, and makes himself a, what ended up being like a double Manhattan, or I don't even know if it was a Manhattan. It was more of a light, it was more bourbon with a splash of vermouth and bitter. And then he showed us around. I mean, that one stood out to me because it was just a lot of fun. It was unpredictable. He was a great guest. It was entertaining. And then he showed us around his house and his kids' game room and all this other stuff. Well, of course, he's got the Manhattan in one hand while he's holding the camera and shaking it a little bit. I mean, it was that one really stood out to me as one of the more unpredictable fun moments that we had on our show. Is there one that stands out for you, Dan?
Yeah, and we recapped a little of this earlier. I think it was a lot of fun to turn the tables on some of the cigar media. We had an opportunity to interview you, Bear, but we also got to talk to Coop and to Charlie over at Half Wheel. And it was just a really fantastic experience. And I remember Coop kind of looking at us and going, I've never had a manufacturer interview me. And, there was a little secret sauce behind the scenes in the prep that went into it. And I'm happy to share that because it really brings home the point that Andy was describing. When we prepared for every guest, we made it clear that our goal in that conversation for our ambassadors was to really feature that guest and whatever their product is, whether it was media or cigars. And we sat down and we thought about, what do we want people to think and feel and do after they hear that guest? You know, when you get aligned that way and you use that kind of as a method, you really build a product that you can be proud of. And I think that most of our guests would say that it was a great experience. It kind of went places that nobody expected. So it wasn't too tightly scripted by any means, but there were just questions so that we could be oriented. But the real focus was highlighting somebody else during that time period that they spent their valuable time with us.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we keep saying a lot of these stories in past tense. We are still providing the off the record series. We're trying to do at least 2 a month. I think it was it last week? Not this past week, but the week before. We had Kurt Kendall on, which was a great show. He's a extremely nice, down to earth guy with an interesting history. And then we have another one coming up next week where we're bringing the smoker friendly guys on. But it's an ongoing series. So like if we have this conversation again, Bear, in 6-8 months, we're going to have even more stories for you.
Right, absolutely.
It's a lot of fun.
So again, we kind of go back to this theme about how you guys took content and engagement to this next level throughout this time. And I know we've kind of already hinted at, we talked about it a little bit at the very beginning of the show based on what we're smoking and everything. But the two areas that I want to focus on for this particular segment is the fact that you guys brought to market, okay, not a concept, not, hey, we're gonna talk to our ambassadors about this idea. No, you guys brought to market a cigar literally called To Be Named. And I gotta be honest, in an honest moment, I still, knowing the whole story now and knowing how it ended up, I still don't know what to make of that. Like the idea of bringing a cigar to market that doesn't have a name, to be named. And there was a small part of me, mind you, that was like, man, I kind of want it to stay this way, just to have something completely different. But I want to bring the full story, and you guys again really push the envelope with engagement with your ambassadors, with your top consumers, to and laid down the gauntlet, laid down the challenge. We have this cigar now, and we want you guys to name it. You know, so I'll let you guys kind of tell the story of what was behind the concept and how did this come to be?
You know, Bear, it's really important to realize it was not a gimmick, right? Because some people said, oh, that's gimmicky that you've done it. What was special about To Be Named is, as a team, we wanted to test a couple assumptions. You know, in the cigar industry, for those of us who are new to it, we always heard things like, you have to bring it to market, it has to be complete, you have to sample it, you have to give it to interviewers, you have to get ratings. You know, a retailer won't purchase something they've never seen. So there were a lot of things that we just didn't know or understand, but we felt confident that we wanted to try to do some things and see where the boundaries of the cigar industry were. And I'll share with you that we spent a full year building the ambassador community. And that meant that, you know, Andy and I are in there every day. Our salespeople are in there. We work really hard to connect and enjoy our time with the ambassadors. And so for us, we saw this 1 year anniversary coming up. We knew that we could name a cigar and ship it. They were all rolled. Everything was ready to go. But we actually pulled back and we said, what if we collaborated with the ambassadors? It's one thing when you just communicate with them, but if we could do some form of collaboration, we thought that that would be special for our community. And so when we made the decision to go to market with the TBN, we brought in a certain number of sticks, and we thought it was really big for us, where we are as a company. And we said, what we'll do is we'll announce this program, we'll announce the contest, it'll run for 3 or 4 months. We have everything built in Nicaragua. Once we get the name decided, we'll build the bands and we'll bring it in this summer. And that was just kind of our mindset. Now, we didn't realize COVID was about to hit. So Andy signed off on it. Alan Davis signed off on it, who runs the production in Nicaragua in our factory in Esteli. Amanda was excited about it, but it really comes down to if you launch a program like this, but you can't sell it, you just fall flat on your face. And we were willing to take that risk because we'd just say, oh, bad idea, we were new. You know?
Well, that brings up the question though, Dan. Was there concern that like, would you guys get enough entries into this contest, or
We knew that the ambassadors would be very interested in naming it and would be active. The scary side is, would our retail partners, where we'd had some problems in the previous years, would they have the trust and confidence in us to bring it into their stores so that people could do it? We didn't have packaging for this. These were just in bundles. And, you know, I think that Andy and his sales team and the story that he can share with you about what happened. So we made the decision, and we knew that the ambassadors, that they would participate and collaborate with us. I really felt good about that because we know our community well. They're kind of like our board of directors. It's like having 5,000 board of directors. We knew they would participate, but where met reality is, would retailers buy it to get it in the hands of consumers? That was the big question.
Yeah, well, what was crazy is we announced it on, we had 500 bundles of this cigar, and I'm actually smoking one right now. If you haven't seen one, the to be named Maduro. And like Dan was saying, we had this great idea to have the ambassadors name it, and we did this show on I think it was a Friday when we unveiled that we had 500 bundles of these, and we said, hey, this is the program, this is the cigar, they're going to start shipping next week, you're going to have the ability to name it. We sold all 500 bundles by Monday. Like, they were gone. Over the weekend, we sold them out. I mean, the ambassadors started calling up their local stores saying, hey, are you going to get this cigar in? You need to get this cigar in. And then retailers were calling, the sales reps saying, hey, are you going to, I have, some random ambassadors or random customers asking for this cigar. What's the deal here? And we would tell them, we have this many bundles. This is the price. This is the program. How many do you want? Oh, I'll take 5, or I'll take 6, or I'll take 10. Like, it was just crazy to see that, because like Dan said, we had thought we had enough. I thought we had enough to go through at least 6 weeks of selling this cigar. No, they were gone on Monday. They were just all gone. And the crazy thing too is, like, you sell all these cigars on Monday. We haven't named it yet. It's a to be named Maduro. Everybody's jumping on, this program that we're doing. And then it was like a week later, we started taking pre-orders for the next batch when we were going to have it named, but we didn't have a date. We just said summertime. Summertime, we're going to have these A's and we're going to be able to, sell them as the A. We were getting left and right pre-orders right off the bat. Like, it was just insane, the overwhelming response to this cigar from everybody that was involved, retailers and the ambassadors. And I mean, good luck finding one of these even right now. I mean, that was released in March. We went through COVID situation where all these stores are closed and everything like that. I mean, you're not going to find any of these in any stores. I don't see them anymore. So, I mean, everybody went out and bought them. Even, a lot of people that weren't ambassadors, were like, oh, that looks like a good cigar. I'll smoke it. Oh, this is great for, the price point. Let me get more. Like, it was just the perfect storm that we created. And it really became like, it really started that whole thing where we're like, man, we're onto something. We can run with this and really, help it, utilize this to help us grow as a company. And it's just been, I mean, the rest is history on that.
And Andy, you and the sales team did such an incredible job. Bear, what also took place in the background. So we were blown away when it sold out in 24 hours. We thought we had like 3 months. At the same time, we brought some retailers into our conference room. We scheduled some calls with them, and we talked about, how do we make this a cigar? How do we price it in a way that's appealing to you as a retailer? How, where should it belong? And we took a lot of retail feedback. At the same time, Amanda was in the process of relaunching the Micallef brand. A lot of people have seen the new artwork over the last 6 months. And so we knew that it gave us an opportunity to kind of start fresh with what became the Micallef A. And it allowed us to design the bands, to take the name that the ambassadors had chosen and to honor them. And so a lot of great things came together. And, you know, I think you were looking at the band before the call, and it's what's back behind me. You know, we're incredibly proud of the effort that was, everything came together at that moment in time for us. And our ambassadors just built this wave of demand, and retailers were just incredible partners.
It really is very, well, first of all, it's incredibly unique to have your own consumers pick the name. Really great concept. You guys not only, you know, put it together, but delivered it in a fantastically short time. I mean, let's, as much as all of us think that COVID's been lasting forever and forever, and it certainly has, you know, we are talking in less than a year, less than half a year, you guys brought this concept to market, got it named, and now have re-released it under that name that again, that your ambassadors can be proud of and everything. So you alluded to this into the chat, Dan. So just I'll bring it to light for the purpose of people who are tuning in later. Is that the original name that the ambassadors chose was in fact the ambassador. Of course, some trademark issues hindered you guys on that front, so you guys went with naming it the A, which also brought about, I won't say like controversy, but certainly a little discussion, because A is a popular name or size or vitola for a cigar, that the Micallef A certainly does not fit those criteria in terms of the traditional A. Was there any discussion around that being an issue, or you guys decided like, hey, no, we want to honor the ambassadors as much as possible, and so we're going to deliver on this name that they chose?
It was really, it's funny that you asked that question. I remember when Charlie Minato called me after he got the press release and he said, Dan, are you stupid? There's an A size cigar and this is not an A. And, you know, just in his like blunt way. And I said, yes, Charlie, we understand that there's a size that's called the A, but we're naming it in honor of the Micallef ambassadors. And as they've discovered when they open the secondary ring, we kind of have a nice message for the ambassadors about it being honoring them. And so it's kind of a, sometimes controversy and confusion can make things interesting. And I think that it's played well. I mean, the ambassadors who were the audience for it certainly understood it. Andy, you may have a perspective that's a little different because you're out selling it.
Well, the funny thing is, yes, I have been told by several retailers, it's like, hey, you know, that's not an A size. And then you have to explain to them the story. And they're like, oh, okay, I get it. You know, that's fine. The funny thing is there's been a couple retailers that we don't do business with that don't really know, you know, we're still a new brand. There's several of them out there that don't really know much about Micallef, or, you know, our story or what, you know, what we have going. I've ran into a couple prospect retailers that said, oh, you guys are the ones that named that cigar that's not an A, the A, right? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, you know what? It's funny because it's not an A, I got confused and I looked it up and I learned about the whole program that you guys did. And that's really cool. You know, that's awesome that you guys did that and how successful it was. And it's like, oh, okay. So it worked that angle too.
We did not plan that. It just kind of worked.
No.
Well, and obviously not when you throw a concept out, and I mean, literally to, all negative connotation aside, to the peanut gallery to let them decide, you know, you're at their mercy essentially. So I know you guys are big fans of how it turned out. But I'm interested, did you guys see, you guys saw all the names, all the choices and everything. Were there any runner-up names that you were like, that'd be pretty cool?
You know, Bear, there were some great names that were there, but ambassador was so heavily weighted at the top. It became a question of, if we can't use ambassador because of the trademark issue that existed, and we want to get it to market on time when we had scheduled it, because we still had to go build bands and boxes and everything else. We didn't have 6 months to wait around. And so A became a great option out of necessity and out of just the finesse and beauty of singly being called the A. And there's other names that were interesting, but nothing compared to A or the ambassador. You know, and in future years, we have other projects that we're going to do with the ambassador community. It may not always be naming a cigar. It could be even deeper and more interesting as they provide us direction in our business.
and to even capitalize even further on this, so this was kind of in the very beginnings of what we known as the COVID climate of 2020. But you guys continued to deliver, as we talked about, the constant content and everything like that. And then you guys launched another program that has been really well received too, and that is, of course, the passport program as well. So Andy, talk a little bit about the concept behind this, and what was the driving force to kind of bringing this out to your consumers and to the retailers.
Well, it actually kind of started, the passport program kind of started as a piggyback off of what we did over the summer for, even though there wasn't a trade show, we did offer a trade show type deal for our retailers called the Phoenix program. And the thought behind the Phoenix program, Phoenix rise from the ashes. We ran with, hey, we're going to help our retailers rise from the ashes of COVID, because all the retailers, like some retailers, did end up coming through COVID pretty well, but I doubt it was easy for any of them, even if they did come out on the right side, because of the, shutting down and the curbside and the mask and all this other stuff and doing orders over the phone. So we offered this program called the Phoenix, and it was based on basically, the more blends you brought in, the better the deal is then for the retailer. So, we were sitting around thinking one day, we're like, okay, this is a good deal to get, more of our blends on retailers' shelves and expand the brand. But we need a program that helps our retailers sell those new blends that they just brought into the store. So we sat around, we thought up of this idea called the passport program. And the whole point behind the passport program was like, we're going to provide our consumers a way to smoke through our line, collect the bands, put the bands on the different pages. We put a page for every blend that we have. And then we have a little note section there as well, where they can write notes about, tasting notes or what they were doing when they smoked the cigar or what have you. Or, there's some funny ones we can get into if you want that we saw. But it was a program to say, hey, this will help our retailers sell through those new blends that they got in by offering the consumers a way to smoke through the line. And then what we also said was like, okay, so we're going to take $10,000 of our own money and put it back into this program in the form of like gift certificates, for instance. So like right now, if a consumer fills out the passport, they turn it into us, we give them a certificate that says they completed it, and then we put them into a weekly drawing. And currently every Friday we draw a passport out of the bulk of the ones that have been completed, and we reward that consumer a $250 gift certificate to a retailer of their choice. Well, how does that work? He picks a retailer. We then call the retailer with a credit card and say, hey, we want to buy a gift certificate from you to give to X customer. And that's another way of saying, hey, we're going to take this money, we're going to put it back into the retailer business. So it was such a good idea. So we came out with these booklets. We've had them out there. We have several completed booklets already, and it's become a very fun program, especially for our ambassadors who are usually on there every day showing us that they're completing their 4th and 5th and 6th, and I think someone's working on their 7th passport now.
Oh my gosh!
I saw the other day, and it's just cool. But I mean, the whole purpose was, a tool for these retailers to use to help spread education and spread the brand around in their stores that could ultimately benefit them. I mean, if a retailer has a customer that is loyal to that customer and he gives them a passport and they fill out that passport, guess what? They're probably going to spend the $250 with that retailer. So then there's some skin in the game too for the retailers to help push this passport program to their consumers that they have coming into their store. And Dan, I think are you going to show one of them? Oh, that's the Phoenix.
What I was going to highlight for you, Bear, is every time that we have a program, this is the Phoenix that was for the retailers. And Andy did a great job explaining it. We wanted to get blends on our shelves, but we also recognize that the trade show model is one large purchased during the trade show. And so we worked on a pattern where, depending on how many blends they purchased, we allowed them to buy future times at that same discount. And you know, Al Micallef was instrumental in it, in saying that people have got to manage their cash smartly. So if we allow them to purchase at their own pace so they don't ever get too overstretched, it's going to be better business between us and our business partners. At the same time, we launched the Passport, which I'm holding up now, and it was for the consumer side of the business, for the ambassadors, and for people to discover all of our blends. We understood that people had their favorite blends, but very few had smoked through all 16 of the blends that we had. And so it gave us an opportunity to talk to our brick and mortar partners and say, hey, when you take this bet on Phoenix and you bring more blends in, we're going to follow up with the consumers, and we're going to help drive consumption of those cigars through a fun manner in our ambassador community. And by the way, and it's just like one of the things I'm most proud about in our organization, instead of spending on advertising, we're going to spend money on brick and mortars and invest in them so that they benefit when their consumers buy Micallef cigars. And it's been a blast. And I think that some of the brick and mortars, they kind of understood it better. But just last week, we had one in Georgia who won, and she was tickled to death. And so it's just a way that through the Phoenix and through the Passport, that we're following up on those promises that we made in our letter in January.
Absolutely.
You know, I was really excited about when you guys launched the Passport program, because it rekindled my very beginnings of my cigar journey. Because, you know, I started smoking, you know, on my 18th birthday, and I started smoking, you know, more heavily in college. And I wanted to, you know, I started reading, you know, a lot of cigar content. There was not nearly as much back then as there is today. But I started reading as much as I could, books, Cigar Aficionado, other magazines like Cigar Press at the time, and other items as well. And what was really fascinating to me is reading cigar reviews. And that's kind of become a more, a larger area of debate, especially in the field that I'm working in currently in cigar media. But what was interesting about it was I was blown away by people who were smoking cigars, which I really enjoyed, and they were picking up nuances and flavors, and I was like, what is this all about? And so I started doing exactly what the Passport program is. I have, you know, much to my wife's chagrin, in our storage unit, I have boxes of notebooks filled exactly in the style of the Passport, with the label taped on, my thoughts, my notes on cigars. And I have just a couple of boxes filled with notebooks. And when my wife first saw them, we were talking about our wives earlier. When my wife first saw them and she saw what that was, she was like, you've got to be joking. Like, you've smoked through all the cigars. I was like, I hate to break it to you, I've smoked more than what's in those notebooks. But it really excited me because it took me back to that beginning of my cigar journey. And I have to again assume that I'm not weird, and that people were probably had similar experiences too when they first started smoking cigars. So it probably brought them back as well. But for the new cigar smoker that was that is just now starting to get into cigars, what a wonderful program to really get them to explore, you know, your cigar. So great business opportunity, but explore their own palate too.
Yeah, Bear,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting that you would say that. Our retailers and the ambassadors and people who've been in the Tasting Passport, you don't have to be an ambassador to be using the Tasting Passport. They've learned that our portfolio of cigars, that the 16 blends, that nobody's going to love all of them. Our blends are designed so that people will have favorites, but then they can experience some other things, you know, and that's something that we're very proud of. And as we watch the Passports coming back, we also get to learn as an organization, because we read the notes that they write in them, you know, and if somebody continually submits a different flavor note, we're going to go reconsider that. And that's part of us being a learning organization and seeing the feedback that people provide us. I'm honestly a terrible describer of the notes that I taste. It's just, my mind doesn't work that way. It's very difficult for me to get those out. But when I read them and see what other people are doing, it really resonates with me. And I think a lot of people are that way. So it's been a really great experience, not only to create for them, but for us as a company to get the feedback on the blends.
And see, that comment kind of blows my mind, Dan, because for the purpose of our audience who don't know, I've known you well before your time with Micallef, and you've, for as long as I've known you, you've had, both you and Andy, for that matter, have had impeccable taste in cigars. So hearing you say that you've had trouble pinpointing flavors kind of just literally blows my mind.
I have a hard time articulating the taste like people make in the notes. And once I've read the notes, then it kind of jogs in my mind. And I don't think I'm the only person in the world this way. There are certainly cigars and brands that I love beyond the Micallef because they have some special taste. But for me, for whatever reason, it's just hard for me to articulate it back. I really admire people who can do that. And it's been a lot of fun watching the ambassadors and people turn in the passports and what their comments were, because we're not perfect. Maybe they pick up something that we haven't. You know, it's subjective, but once you start getting enough feedback, then you really become confident on what you're doing.
Yeah, and there's actually, it's fun to see too, some of these ambassadors that, are so loyal to our brand, but there's cigars in our line that they hadn't smoked until they tried the passport. And then they have one of them in the passport and they're like, wow, this is one of my new favorites. I see that all the time of people that have discovered a new go-to in our line just by smoking through the passport. It's pretty cool to see.
It's exciting. I mean, so speaking of palettes, that's going to lead us a perfect segue into tonight's One Must Go. And so those of people who are familiar with my show, and then for some of the ambassadors that are joining us tonight who aren't familiar, I have this segment called One Must Go, and it's a great opportunity to kind of just divest from what we're talking about in a more serious manner and have a little bit of fun. And so this concept is actually brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana and distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. And so the concept behind One Must Go, everyone, is I'm presenting my guests. So Andy and Dan will have 3 choices presented before them. And the idea is that one has to be kicked to the curb. And so I try to typically take a collective something that is interesting behind my guest background and kind of center it around them. But because I have a duo of guests tonight, I didn't want to necessarily lean at one side or the other to Dan or Andy. So I decided to have a little fun tonight. We're going to pull together just a fun concept. So we're going to talk about something that we may still enjoy today, but we certainly probably enjoyed more so as children. And that, of course, is breakfast cereal. So breakfast cereal is a highly, we talked about flavor notes and cigars a moment ago, and that's certainly combative enough, on social media these days. But we're gonna lay waste to another battle, and that is of breakfast cereal. So, guys, I'm gonna give you 3 cereal brands, and one has to be kicked to the curb. You can never, again, all in fun, but you can never eat it again. You can never talk about it again. Which one gets the boot, essentially? So here are your choices: Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, or Frosted Flakes.
You want me to go first?
I will give you the honor, Andy. Absolutely.
Lucky Charms. I'm not a marshmallow guy. Never have been.
Even with that roaring fire behind you, no s'mores tonight in that Yaffee household?
It's funny. My brother and my now sister-in-law, they wanted us to make s'mores tonight, and we did not follow through with that. But I'm not a marshmallow guy. I have never been a marshmallow guy. I can't stand marshmallows. So unfortunately, that is an easy one for me. I enjoy both Fruit Loops and Frosted Flakes. Not really as much anymore, but I did growing up. Lucky Charms, never saw the light of day with that.
Is marshmallows like a texture thing with you? Like what is it about the marshmallow that just offends the Yaffee palate?
Maybe it is a texture. It does nothing for me. It's too fluffy. I guess it's just fluffy. I don't know. Never a fan.
Let that be known, Dan. Andy does not like fluff. So
okay, so we won't torture him with marshmallows next time he's in the office.
There you go.
Bear, it's like a really funny question. In my cigar preferences. I have really strong opinions about what I love. I can't articulate them, but I know what I like. So, breakfast cereal is kind of the same way. And the reality is, I don't care for marshmallows either. But the one that's got to go for me is Frosted Flakes because they're soggy. And I don't like soggy. That's a texture problem in that regard. So I think that Lucky Charms brings in a great accent of sweetness through the marshmallows. They're not like other marshmallows. And, you know, once it gets in your milk and it's all kind of good, I really like the Lucky Charms. And Fruit Loops, they've definitely got to stay. But all three of your choices are kind of like desserts for me. I don't get to eat breakfast cereal like that anymore.
So the secret to eating Frosted Flakes, Dan, is you got to pour the milk and you gotta attack, man. You can't, this isn't a battle of attrition. You gotta just attack and go after it and really enjoy the crunch and the sweetness of the milk and sugar together.
So you guys would agree with me then, unless you're like a chow hound and a speed racer, Frosted Flakes, when they get soggy, not too good.
I have 2 young kids, so I don't get a much chance to eat anyway. So I'm attacking pretty much anything right off the bat, or otherwise I'm pretty much used to eating things cold or soggy, as it were anyway. So, but yeah.
Well, that's part of being a dad, right?
Right, exactly. So the interesting choice for me, I found the Lucky Charms thing a little baffling. And it seems like that's a popular choice, and we got some people chiming in here that Lucky Charms has to go. Greg Lynch is like, Frosted Flakes, they're great. And I know Coop actually enjoys his breakfast cereal without milk, which is also bizarre. But that's another discussion.
Then it's just a snack, right?
Yeah, that's what I keep saying. It's like
Yeah,
potato
it's
chips,
snack.
but not,
Yeah.
yeah. So they're like sugar chips. No, the one for me that's got to go. This is interesting. So growing up, my mother was, she tried to be as health conscious as possible. In light of recent research through, the last 30 years that's kind of delivered us children don't have to have milk with every dinner meal. That was a staple when I was growing up because, she grew up and was learned that a glass of milk with dinner was healthy. That was the proper thing for a growing person to have. And she always had vegetables and fruits with dinner. I've always ate well-balanced meals. And the same was with the breakfast. And I was certainly allowed to have cereal. That wasn't taken out of my my diet as a child. But my mother was very picky about the cereals that I could eat. And I remember the first time I went to church camp as a young 5th grader, I got the experience of the first time in my life to ever eat Fruit Loops. And it was the most glorious thing in the world for my 5th grade mind, I have to tell you. But reflectively, I look back and in all these years and everything, and the one that's got to go for me is actually Fruit Loops. It's just too sugary. It's just, that's kind of like obnoxious considering we're talking about one with marshmallows and then corn flakes covered in sugar, but
it's covered. Yeah, Frosted Flakes is sugar.
Yeah, but yeah, Fruit Loops to me is just I don't know. It is the artificial fruit, the sugar on top of it. It's just a little over the top for me, and it just never did the trick. Trix is another one of those examples too that was kind of like that too, but I was able to eat Lucky Charms because they did have, along with the marshmallows, they did have just the whole grain pieces in there tossed in. I guess my mom thought that was equivalent to balance. And then Frosted Flakes, I was allowed for some reason as well. But Fruit Loops were off the market. But I remember as a 10-year-old at church camp for the very first time. And I was in heaven because I got to have Fruit Loops and I didn't have my mom telling me no. It was the best. It was like like when we all went to college for the first time and could do what we wanted. That was that moment for me when I was a fifth grade kid. But an interesting discussion nonetheless. Gentlemen, thank you for participating in our One Must Go. Of course, it was brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. Smoke one today and start living united. So, gentlemen, really appreciate the discussion that we're having tonight, and thank you so much for taking over the show while I experienced some technical difficulties. It wouldn't have been the same otherwise. But you guys are pros at this. It was like you didn't miss a beat. It's awesome. Before we kind of get back into what Micallef has been doing for 2020 and all the amazing things that you guys have been doing for your consumers and your ultimate customer, which is in fact the retailer, I do want to kind of talk about a more current event, and there's an interesting tie in here because after 90 years, the iconic brand of Nat Sherman cigars is no more. Michael Herklotz closed the doors of the Nat Sherman Townhouse for the very final time just a few short days ago. And we say goodbye to an iconic American brand that has, for almost this entire century, has been part of the industry that the three of us love. And so I'm interested to get your perspectives. And Andy, I'll kick off with, I'll give you the honors again, because you have a very interesting take on this, because you actually worked for Nat Sherman for a time. And so, when you saw the news that, there was no longer going to be Nat Sherman, what memories did that and thoughts did that bring about for you?
Well, I think it is very unfortunate. I did, like you mentioned, I did a very brief stint with them. It was just a little over 6 or 7 months that I worked for them, but I did get a chance to visit the iconic townhouse in New York. I did get a chance to build somewhat of a relationship with Herklotz and learn a little bit about the history of the brand. And it's very sad to see them go. Like you said, they've been around for 90 years. They tout themselves as the tobacconists of the world. Everybody knows or has some sort of experience, in my opinion, with the Nat Sherman brand in some form or fashion. If you're a cigar smoker, the news was very surprising to me. Obviously about it was late last year, they came out and said that Altria was looking for a buyer of the Nat Sherman cigar side of the company. And I figured that there would be a buyer. I know COVID probably delayed things a little bit or made some buyers change their mind on taking over the brand. However, I still thought there would be a buyer with that rich history in that townhouse. It's just very much a shame to see it go. I never would have imagined them coming out with the news that they came out with, saying that they were just shutting business, shutting down their doors on that iconic townhouse and shutting out the Nat Sherman business. I would not be shocked, Bear, if one day someone resurrects it. There's just too much history there. I don't know if, what form or fashion that would be, but it was very disappointing to see the brand go away. And I know Michael Herklotz is one of the hardest working people in this industry, and he has done
Amen.
So much for that brand. He has done so much for the cigar industry in general, as far as fighting for cigar rights. He has done so much for the TAA organization. There's no doubt in my mind he will land on his feet wherever that might be, and he will continue his legacy. But it's very sad to see that brand fold, considering what he has done for it and how he has built that up, over the last, I think he was there almost 10 years, if not a little longer. So I'm very sad about the closure of that business. It will be missed for sure.
So Dan, before I get your thoughts on this, I had an interesting question for you. So you and Michael have a similar title, a similar role for the companies that you represent. From where you sit as a true, linear colleague of Michael, I'm interested to get your thoughts. Can you imagine anyone in your position handling the situation that Michael found himself in with more grace and dignity and professionalism? I've been blown away by it personally.
Bear, it's such a sad situation. Michael just exudes class, and his whole organization did. I mean, they were truly wonderful professionals in how they stewarded that business under very difficult conditions. I have a real affinity or love for the family-owned business, and it could be farming and ranching. It could be bakeries or beer makers. The cigar industry, we've got these rich tradition of these family-owned brands. And I felt sick the moment that I heard that it was acquired. And I thought, man, this is going to be so difficult for Michael, because when you have a multinational parent, no matter how good you perform, if it doesn't align with the strategies that they're going to deploy, this is the way it ends. And so I don't know Michael. I admire the hell out of him and the team that he built and the professional service and the tradition that they represented in that family brand. And I can't imagine a more sickening feeling, because you know it in your bones when you're acquired that way. You know, it may take a year, it may take 3 years, it may take 4 years, but for Michael to just all the things that he did, not just about like self-preservation, but you know that he's a man of character because of the things he could do in the industry. And, you know, I just admire the hell out of him. And I'm sorry that their global multinational master decided it wasn't part of their strategy. And, you know, we wish Michael's the kind of person that could move into any industry he wants. It could be fashion, it could be cigars, whatever he's going to do extraordinarily well. And the team that was underneath him, they're going to be very good at what they do also.
Yeah, it's I was there, Dan, when the Dan and Bear, when the statement came out about Altria saying that they were for cigar regulation. And, you know, unfortunately, in Altria's head, they had a different intention with that statement. But it came off really bad to the brick and mortars of this country, thinking, not only is Nat Sherman now bought by this multinational, huge brand, now they're for cigar regulation. Like, we're in this major fight to make sure that, there is no cigar regulation, that we have the freedom to make the cigars and run this industry the way, we should. And the way Michael handled it during that, because, it wasn't Michael that was saying that. It wasn't him that wrote that
Absolutely.
statement. It was basically, hey, Mike, we wrote this statement and we're going to release it, good luck. Like, it was extremely, extremely difficult. And I remember I had several retailers when that statement came out, call me up and, basically say, don't ever try to sell me Nat Sherman cigars again, this and that. And that just, for him, that had to be extremely heartbreaking. But the way he handled it and the way that he was able to lead us as a team through that. And I mean, I left a short time after that, but I mean, they went on for another two years after that statement, and led his team, through the fight that presented. Speaks volumes of what kind of leader he is and how much he believed in that, his product and the Nat Sherman history and the cigar industry and this and that. So kudos to him. It's unfortunate the way it's ended, but like Dan said, he's going to land on his feet. He'll be successful in whatever he does next. But it's just a very sad situation.
So I have an interesting perspective on this whole thing. So, we laud Michael for all his accomplishments, well deserved. And he really did bounce back from each one of these hits. It was almost like the definitive case of take, 2 steps forward and then 1 step back each time. He kind of, to use a word that we were talking about earlier, the Phoenix, man, really just bouncing back from each one of these dilemmas, and from the acquisition, then from the statement. And then, there was a situation with a lot of the team, losing their positions or what have you. And those details actually never came to light necessarily. I know that a lot of people were either let go or moved on and things like that. And so that was another one. And then it kind of capped off with, in the fall, before we even knew what COVID was, Altria makes this announcement. And I got to say, though, when Altria made the announcement that they were going to sell Nat Sherman cigars off, that they were in the market for finding a buyer for it, I had this sense of relief for Michael. And I knew that this was one that he could and it's interesting, right? In hindsight, being 2020, this was the one that I knew he could overcome. I was like, oh, this is perfect. This will be a walk in the park for him. And God, was I wrong, because it ended up going a different way, unfortunately. And Dan, I think you're absolutely right. Michael will find a place somewhere in this world. Hopefully it's in cigars, because I think he's just an incredible asset for our industry. And my best wishes to him and all the people, the great people that work for Nat Sherman. And it's but it is sad to see an iconic brand like that go the way that it did. Just to have a little fun with it, though, Dan, did it even creep into your thought to talk to Al about maybe buying it up? Is it even
Oh,
a
you're a
inkling?
funny guy, Bear. You're a really funny guy.
Hey, we all have pipe dreams. I thought about it. I'll be honest. I was like, man, I wish I could go fund me this and go give Michael a bid right now.
Bear, Al and I have spent 3, almost 4 years in this industry, and we have a lot to learn. That said, we're always reviewing potential acquisitions. It's something that's important to us, but it's got to be done at the right time, and it's got to make sense for us. So I don't want to comment on that one specifically because I have so much respect for that team. And, when your multinational master makes a decision like that, Hercules, his resiliency and his character and those people, I mean, it's extraordinary. So, for your audience, sure, Micallef Cigars evaluates acquisitions regularly. However, right now, we're very focused on the brick and mortars and what we're doing in our business, because we've now got the foundations in place to really be a great company.
Awesome. Dan Thompson, always the professional. I was really just asking for funs and shits and giggles, but appreciate the seriousness of my tone there.
I mean, these are, when you talk about people's livelihoods, I mean, it's a really serious thing. I spent 20 years as an executive in a multinational, and the most difficult decision I made at Microsoft is when we sold a business unit that I helped build from scratch, and those were some of the dearest friends in my life. And they had to move to a new company. And so it was about, how do you negotiate their new deal? So, people's livelihoods are so important. And, we just try to be respectful of that. But I certainly don't want people to think we're not looking. We are. But it's got to be something that makes sense for Micallef Cigars.
Absolutely. So, and that kind of leads perfectly into going back into Micallef and some decisions that you guys have made. And we've talked a lot about the amazing decisions that you guys have had and have been pushing forward and bringing to fruition throughout 2020, throughout this difficult COVID-19 situation. And that led us to the news this week that was released on Cigar Coop, that Micallef is ending its relationship with Meyer and Dutch, no longer be selling cigars to CI, Thompson, and their other affiliates and everything. So, Dan, I'll let you open the floor with this. What went into this decision as far as, ending a relationship that, quite frankly, had to be very lucrative for both of you all?
Yeah. Bear, the Cigar International and Thompson's and Meyer Dutch, I don't know if everybody understands those relationships, but Meyer and Dutch is the distribution company, and Cigar International is online retail, Thompson's is catalog. And they were with us from the beginning when we started Micallef Cigars. So in many regards, I really have to thank them for taking a bet on Micallef as we began to grow. I don't want to be against Cigars International in any way. I want to be for something in terms of our company. And as we wrote that 2020 strategy memo and published it, and then as we went through the crucible of time through the early COVID, it became apparent to us as Andy built his sales team, where we were having success is with the retail brick and mortar company. They're people that we can work with. We can introduce them. We can build programs that help them. They provide us feedback that helps us. And so as we moved through the year, the conversation became a decision point had to be made. Do the next 2 or 3 years have us continuing to operate with Meyer and Dutch and Cigar International? Or are we for the brick and mortars and the retail business? And, eventually we reached a point where we had to say, the Cigar International business doesn't really align with our strategy that we laid out in public for everybody to see. We're having a lot of success as Andy's built his team and we're working with the brick and mortars. As you can imagine, at Cigar International, their model is online sales. But when we talk about programs like Phoenix and the Tasting Passport, they don't know how to leverage that from us. And it doesn't really fit into their universe and their world. And when you just step back and you're more strategic and you think about the growth of your company, there's a time for brand building and introduction to the public. We've got a great ambassador community, but it's important for us to win the hearts and minds of consumers, ambassadors, and retailers. That's where we are in our life cycle. And as we got to understand the Cigar International business, or the Thompson's business, it became apparent to it that it was in conflict with the brick and mortars and the retailers. And we thought at first we'll just kind of walk the thin line and we'll do an exclusive Micallef that'll only be available in brick and mortars. But that's a bad strategy because you're lukewarm and people don't know what you are or aren't. So for us, we had to make the hard decision. And to be honest, it wasn't that hard because we knew where we had momentum and we knew where we were growing. And we have this affinity for wanting to work with family-owned businesses. And once you make that decision, it's done, and we worked with Cigar International. We're going to buy back our inventory for ambassadors who don't have a brick and mortar near them. We're going to work with the retailers and the brick and mortars who want to do online sales. And we do that with Ultimate Inventory and some other tools. So we're going to be able to serve both communities, but it's like the greatest feeling in the world when you can just look at your strategy and look at what you're executing on, and they become perfectly aligned. Andy and his team, they've been out in the field and they're having to explain different things. Now it is one strategy, one mission, one execution.
Absolutely, Dan. So we came out. Oh.
Yeah, Andy, this is perfect because I want to. This is a decision that directly affected your team and what your goals are and everything. So yeah, yes, please enlighten us with your thoughts on it.
So at the beginning of this year, Bear, we released a letter to the industry. It was basically our open strategy of what we wanted to achieve and our goals in 2020. And it's funny, even with COVID, we've been able to continue fulfilling our strategy and our promises to the industry. And one of those promises was we want to build our brand with the brick and mortars of this country, with the mom and pop shops, with the physical retail locations that are out there. And, we did that with the A, we did that with the Ultimate Inventory. We're doing that with the Passport program, with the Phoenix. The CI was just another chip off of that promise that said, hey, we're not going to do business with Cigars International. We're going to do business exclusively with the retail brick and mortars of this country, because that's how we believe it's the best way to build the brand. And we believe that they are the future of the industry. Everybody wants to go to a brick and mortar to smoke a cigar. That's just what we want to do. And we want to provide, them the tools they need to be successful so that we can keep doing that. And every day there's a new regulation or a new, situation in a certain city or state that doesn't allow you to be able to provide the business and service to your customers that you want to be able to provide. We want to be on your side. We want to be that brand that says, hey, what do you need from us to help you succeed? And, this was just another situation that allows us to strengthen that position. And, my thoughts, when we discussed pulling out of Cigars International, there was no doubt in my mind. There was nothing in me that said, maybe we shouldn't do that. No, it was what we needed to do to continue to fulfill the promise that we wanted to make to our, retail partners. And, I'm excited about it. My team is extremely excited about it. When we made the announcement on Friday, it was an overwhelming positive feedback from the retail partners that I interact with. And I reached out to some of my team, and they said they received the same feedback. So I ultimately think it was the best decision, and it's going to allow us to have another weapon in our arsenal when we're out there selling in the field, saying, hey, we're doing business with you. We don't want to do business with people that ruin your business, basically. Like, we want to grow with the brick and mortars.
It would be really unfair of me, Andy, to ask you to comment on, an individual retailer's perspective on this, but but I know enough retailers to know that there are some retailers who do take into account companies that do business with companies like Meyer Dutch, CI, and because they're not the only players in that world, but they do take that into account when they make purchasing decisions, right or wrong. That's their own personal decision. So I know you've, as a rep and now as a national sales leader, you've run into that as well. And you just said that, you've received some positive feedback on it, but when this decision was made, did that bring any sort of relief to those people that you have had those conversations with?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the answer to that is yes. I mean, I had several retailers that reached out to me that said, this is the best thing I've heard all year from anybody. The fact that you're going to get behind us and help us grow and do exclusive business with us, that's fantastic. I no longer have to compete with this huge monster that's out there that can sell your cigars online to all sorts of people across the country, including my own customers that come in here and possibly sample a cigar and then think they can go online and buy it for cheaper. Like, I don't have to worry about that with you guys anymore. Like, you're in it for us. I mean, it just strengthens the trust that they have in us as a brand. And I mean, we're just going to continue to grow from there.
Bear, I think it's important that you're aware and your audience is aware that when we laid out the strategy memo, our goal was to become a top 10 manufacturing that people want to buy from in brick and mortars. And with that goal, people say, how do you define it? What is the measure of success? And our measure of success is really simple. We want to become on that short list of manufacturers that if a retailer, family-owned business decides, hey, I can only cut to 10, we just played one's got to go out of 3. But imagine being in that retail area in that humidor and everything's got to go but 10. We want to be one of those 10. And that there's very admirable companies, whether it's Padron or Fuentes or, Roma Craft or Crown Heads. There's a lot of great companies, but our success over the long run, it's not a cash measure right up front. It's about becoming one of the top manufacturers that retailers want to work with. And when you have a company like CI, their strategy is just very different. And we're not able to develop that, company to company deep relationship that makes sense for both of us, where we can succeed together. And that's okay. They're going to do their thing and we'll do ours. And we were happy to be part of it, but we realized it was not consistent with the strategy that we've laid out. And so that's why we made the decision. And it really, really is focused on the brick and mortar stores that we feel like we can be successful with.
I mean, that's an incredibly lofty goal, Dan. I mean, you're talking about being one of those top 10 and synonymous names of, you mentioned a couple, Padron and Fuente, Davidoff, and then some of the hotter boutiques like Roma Craft, Crown Heads. You want to be synonymous with those names, and for all intents and purposes, you guys are the young kid in the room by comparison.
Which is great. We're only 4 years old, right? So you have to set your goal and know what you want to be when you grow up. And many of those families have a 60 or 70 year head start on us. We admire them, we study them, we realize that they may have some distinct advantages that we don't have. That's okay. We have to figure out what is the pathway for Micallef Cigars to get on that list. And I got to tell you, I want 200 stores where we're on that list. I got 198 more to go.
That's awesome. So I do have to play devil's advocate on this, Dan. I'm interested to get your thoughts because, again, with the climate that we're living in, and so many companies that I've talked to, and I'm taking them at their word on this, is that everyone's having a terrific year. Expenses are down, sales are either the same or up, and it's been a tremendous year for a lot of cigar companies, you all included, as we've been talking about tonight. But to play devil's advocate for a moment, a lot of the market now with COVID shutting down a lot of these brick and mortars to reducing them to call in, curbside, walk in only, really, really putting a dent on their business. And I, again, applaud you guys for what you're trying to do and focusing on them. But just to play devil's advocate for a moment, were there internal concerns that COVID increasing the demand for online sales, that this could come back to perhaps not work out so well?
No, we're not concerned about that at all. We definitely think it through. When you talk about JRs or CI or Thompsons, they sell to a very specific part of the market, is the majority of their business. For our business to be successful, it's got to be built with other people. And that's going to happen in the brick and mortars. But at the same time, we're going to bring business options to those brick and mortars, like ultimate inventory that we discussed. And there's several of our brick and mortar partners who they begin their online business. Andy can talk in just a minute about our events and how that morphed. But we continue morphing the business in a way where people from around the United States, they can go online to, I don't know if it's a dozen, it may be a dozen today, maybe 2 dozen by the end of the year, websites, and buy our cigars. And, that's where I said that we're committed to working closely business to business with the retailers in whatever way we can to help them. But at the same time, we're going to build a community and the ambassadors to drive those sales. You should ask Andy about the event that he did last week at an ambassador.
Well, before I touch on that, another thing, Dan, is like, we offer that ultimate inventory program. And, that's a way that through several retailers, they can get, any of these guys can get our product. I have, like Dan said, there's a dozen websites out there. There's probably a little more than that, but I have several members of the ultimate inventory program that have a store website, and they don't carry in physical, in their store every single thing that we offer, but because they we offer them the ultimate inventory, they're able to put everything that we offer on that website. And if it's ordered through the website, guess what? We're going to ship it to them. But they get the money for it. They get the sales. So, that's another tool that we have to get around what you're saying, Bear. Like, we offer that solution to our retailers, and any of our retailers can sign up for, they can reach out to us and try to sign up and apply to be part of that ultimate inventory program.
Well, Dan brings about a good, interesting point about this. To my point of playing devil's advocate a moment ago, as far as, losing that quote unquote online component, or at least a large portion of it. But you guys are embracing that online component with these virtual events to kind of bring into it. And the ultimate inventory program that we've kind of teased about, and you probably discussed it while I was off air briefly with my technical difficulties, but again, I want to really focus on it for just 2 seconds here, just to give my audience a perspective on how important, how crucial, and how big this is for anyone who potentially wants to get a hold of your product. So Andy, if you would detail out exactly who ultimately benefits from the ultimate inventory program and who can participate in the ultimate inventory program.
So the beneficiary of the ultimate inventory program is both the consumer and the retailer. So we have a lot of ambassadors that tell us that they live, so many miles away from one of our retailers that we do business with, or there's even ambassadors that live, in the middle of nowhere that say, where can I get the product? Now, now they definitely can't get it through CI, but they can get it from one of our ultimate inventory partners by, ordering it through the store that is part of a member. So we're also offering it to the retailer as a benefit, because they can sell anything in our inventory without actually carrying the product physically in the store. So, I mean, you know, even at Michael's, if you wanted to carry every little facing from every little brand, there's no way you could do that. I mean, you'd have to commit to 2 or 3 lines to fill that humidor. With our product, you know, we realize there's a lot of stores out there that can't carry all 45, 46, whatever it is, SKUs that we carry on their shelves. But if they're part of the ultimate inventory program, they could sell all 46, all 47 SKUs from our warehouse, and we will go ahead and ship it to them. So it allows them not to have to, you know, overly stock their humidor with, you know, with every single facing, but they're still able to sell it to their consumers. So they both benefit from it greatly. And it also, like I mentioned while you were off air, it's like one of those situations too where an ultimate inventory partner, you know, we unveiled it in COVID when some of these stores were closed or curbside, or, you know, you couldn't go in the humidor. They could buy, you know, they could still sell anything in our portfolio, even in their, I mean, I always say this, they could sell it in their underwear. They could sit at home in bed in their underwear and take it, you know, as long as they have a way to take money over the phone, they can go on their laptop and order our product, and we'll ship it for them. It takes 2 minutes out of their day to put in the order, if that. So that program was a huge benefit for both the consumer and the retailer that were part of the program.
Bear, the key on ultimate inventory is really simple. We want our retail partners to be able to say yes when a customer asks for a product.
Yeah, I've heard
We
you
don't
say it.
expect them to have 46 Vitolas on their shelf. So if somebody says, I want a Churchill, but they only have Toros on the shelf, the answer is yes, it'll be at your house in 2 days. And that's the power of a program like Ultimate Inventory. And when we work with retailers who have 1 or 2 shops, it's generally really a blessing for them because they don't have complex warehouses where they distribute to multiple shops. We have other tools for shops where they may have 10 or 16 stores where we can work with them in a different way that's appropriate for their business needs. So you've heard a lot about ultimate inventory, but we also recognize that if you run a more complex operation, we're going to work with you to find the right solutions for your needs also.
Yeah.
So, Andy, I want to go back to your comment a moment ago about how you've received some really positive feedback when this decision came to light earlier this week from retailers that, you know, now feel like they are 100% backed, which was obviously the goal of Micallef. And you guys are carrying through with your mission statement from the beginning of the year as you enlightened us. I'm curious to know if you've gotten any, I mean, with the exception of the obvious, should be coming back up, guys.
There it is.
Okay. Looks like we're back up. All right, so we'll go ahead and just hit a recap here. What we were kind of talking about a few moments ago with just the ultimate inventory program basically was first to come, and then you guys made the announcement that was this week with foregoing your relationship with Meyer Dutch and CI, and of course all their affiliates as well. But this brings about an interesting, my one last interesting question about this was that with this decision coming down in the way that it has, I'm interested to hear from you, both of you guys, how if you guys ever foresee a moment or a business avenue or a perspective in which you guys could re-enter a relationship with them, or is this a permanent move going forward for Micallef?
So Bear, when we had the conversations with the CI team, we talked about it's not right for us right now, but we certainly wanted to reserve the right to come back and engage in the conversation in the future. Now, I tell that to you so that I'm just totally transparent about the way the conversation went down. It's our personal belief that the brick and mortar exclusive is the correct option for Micallef Cigars. You know, Abe covered this story with Coop on his show earlier on Saturday. You know, and Abe pointed out that when cigar manufacturers get to a certain size, sometimes they need a place to move inventory on sticks that aren't selling. And so I would say that, you know, maybe it's possible someday, but really I can't imagine that because we're going to commit and lock into. The invitation's there, but I don't know that the strategy ever involves them again. But, you know, that's just where we are today. It's truly brick and mortar. And if we were to ever do something with them, we would have to meet with all of our brick and mortar partners and explain why we're doing some one-off thing. So they can count on us that we've made our decision. We spent 2 or 3 years in the previous relationship, and now we feel like it was time to end it and move forward with something that's much more focused.
So talking about just another, you know, again, you guys have made some really tough decisions in 2020, some really great decisions that have panned out with incredible success, as we've kind of discussed in detail tonight. But going back to one of my original questions from the very top of the show, which was foregoing going to this year's PCA, but you guys did attend the TPE trade show, which actually, believe it or not, actually did take place in 2020. I know we've all kind of gone through 2020 thinking that it's been completely enveloped by COVID, and most of it certainly has. But there was a trade show at the very beginning of the year, the Tobacco Plus Expo, where you guys did attend that. Now, was this honoring a commitment that you made prior to the decision about foregoing attendance at this year's PCA, or was it made in conjunction with that decision?
So let's do this in 2 parts. From my point in the strategy, we thought that TPE was a better fit. It doesn't incur the large expenses and overhead that going to PCA does. Our sales leader, Andy, had a strong voice and felt that it was important. So maybe Andy, you should talk about why we decided to go and the results.
Well, like you said, Dan, we felt like TPE was a better fit for us to go. We didn't need to have, you know, all the expenses to go into it, but we also felt like TPE was a growing show with a lot of interest and a lot of intrigue. And, you know, part of it was, we wanted to know what their secret was, what that interest was, what was driving that intrigue to that show. And another part of it was, you know, we had this open letter that we did, and we felt what a better way to go out there and tell retailers that, hey, this is what we're going to do this year, whether you believe it or not. This is, you know, what we're going to try to achieve this year, and, you know, step back and watch us, basically. So it was a very unique show. It was a lot more cigar oriented than I anticipated it being. And I hear that every year that continues to grow as far as a facet of that show. The success of it was very good for us. We were able to establish some relationships at the show that we've continued to build throughout this year, which was good. And I felt like it was a way for me to really start, you know, dipping my feet into being a national sales director and organizing a show and organizing, you know, these talks with these retailers and building these relationships that we, you know, felt were necessary to help us grow as a brand. So, I mean, that was it in a nutshell. The TPE decision was made, like Dan said, because we thought it was a better fit, and we felt like, you know, we really wanted to see where that was heading into the future. And I was very, very impressed with the TPE show, what they did. You know, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Bear, I feel like you're kind of we're skirting an issue. Micallef Cigars thinks that the PCA has done has had success in their lobbying and the rights that they drive for us as an industry. You know, certainly the latest legal results, they were a large part of. So we don't want to say we don't not support the PCA. We just don't think that trade show format's very good for us. So we're still active members of PCA. You know, there's a lot of questions about the future of PCA, and we're just like everybody else trying to read the tea leaves and understand where it's going. But if you just honestly, from a Micallef perspective, we're committing to these brick and mortars, we're investing our money in our sales organization and being able to reinvest in them. And sometimes that may mean we have to make choices not to attend PCA or one of the big smokes because those just don't provide the value and the results that we think that we need to acquire at this time.
So just to connect the dots a little bit from the previous question, when I asked if, you guys would ever go to find yourselves in a returning relationship with Meyer and Dutch, you basically said never say never, but, right now under the current model, the decision is the decision. Is that the similar?
Fair, let me just answer that. So, I don't want to misspeak.
And I don't want to misquote you, Dan. So yeah, please.
Yeah. The answer is we don't intend to return to that model.
Okay.
However, we have worked in a way to be respectful between our companies that we didn't burn a bridge so that we couldn't do it, but that's not the strategy that we're going to be executing on. You've heard me say we want 200 stores where we're considered a top 10 manufacturing partner. If that's the goal, then Cigar International, Dutch Meyer probably don't fit in.
So to that point, then, do you guys see yourself if returning to PCA, or like you said, are you in a wait and see pattern before you guys would even think about even committing to any kind of inkling of that decision?
TPE is a more likely scenario. PCA would really have to understand the value proposition for us as a manufacturer to attend. When you deeply invest in your sales team, and Andy and the sellers that he has, we're starting to cover in a much deeper way the retailers, and trade shows are down in every industry. So that's a difficult business model. And, our industry is not immune to that. So TPE, it's a possibility. PCA would really have to understand the value prop on why we would do that.
Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate y'all's time tonight, and what troopers you guys have been, and our audience as well has been incredible tonight. Really chiming in, really enjoying what you guys have done for 2020, and I'm really excited for what you guys are going to be bringing to the table beyond this. I do have one final question though, and that of course is our curveball segment. So I wanted to ask you guys a question, and I'm gonna ask it, and I want you guys to both answer independently. I call it my curveball segment, but it's more of a kind of a what if dream kind of scenario. And so it's two-part. And so for those people who may not know, you can certainly regale the story again, but the history of Micallef, it revolves around, and I'm going to do the Reader's Digest version of how it started, but Al's relationship with the Gomez Sanchez family started with them showing up at his favorite retail shop where he often hung out, and they formed a relationship, and thus Micallef was born, and here the three of us are sitting tonight. So my question to you in two parts, and again, I want independent answers from both of you, is if Al doesn't meet the Gomez Sanchez family in the crazy fashion in which he did, does Micallef exist today? And if the answer is yes, does Dan Thompson or Andy Yaffee, are they working for that Micallef company today as well?
Jeez. Does Micallef exist today? See, I know Al, and he's always had a tendency to invest in and he's always had a hobby of smoking cigars and a passion for the cigar industry. Does Micallef Cigars exist today? I think eventually something happens. I think eventually Al Micallef does start a cigar brand. It's hard for me to imagine how different that could look without the Gomez Sanchez family. and what they're able to do for us and the great cigars that they're able to make for us. Would I be working for them? Sure. I mean, I think Al, I completely admire Al, and I completely very happy with the situation that he has provided me and my family, the visions that he has as a successful businessman with his history and several different businesses. And that drives me, that motivates me. And I could see myself being a fit with whatever, whatever the Micallef mold would be on the cigar side of things. And I'd be very happy there. So I do think that Micallef cigars would exist in some sort of fashion today. It might be a little bit different than what it is, but as far as like the innovative ideas and stuff that we've come up with, they'd probably still be there, and I would still probably be very intrigued and happy working for Al. That would be my curveball answer.
Dan?
Al has an uncanny ability to take his hobbies and turn them into businesses. And, one of the businesses that the Micallef family has is the Riata, which is a very large high-end restaurant in Fort Worth. It's also in Alpine, Texas. There's one in Alpine, Texas, because there's a ranch near Alpine. And, Al's an entrepreneur to his core. Al also recognizes that most great entrepreneurial activities are done with partners, because it's when, multiple people can come together and provide knowledge to each other. That's when you can really excel. So, the Gomez Sanchez family and meeting in Fort Worth, I think that's what was just meant to happen. If it wouldn't have been them, it could have been somebody else. I know that Al, certainly when he steps into an industry, his eyes are very wide open, and he says, I don't know and I don't understand, but I'm willing to invest for the long term to make it a success. There's no doubt in my mind that he would have bought his own factory in Esteli to be able to work with somebody. So I don't think that that's a surprise. In terms of myself, being in the role that I'm in today, gosh, I retired from one company, and I realized that I'm not a startup guy, but I'm more of a scale up a business. I like having a team, and I like working with Andy and learning from his perspective and helping him grow as a leader. I love Amanda and the perspective she brings, and I like helping her grow as a leader. So I think the pieces would have come together regardless of an individual meeting. But once that kind of initial flicker happens, Al gets very serious very fast and wants to acquire the assets and the resources in terms of people and manufacturing capability to be able to be successful in what he chooses. So I agree with Andy. I think it would have happened. I mean, I'm just incredibly fortunate that it happened in a time frame that it was good for me also. And I think Andy shares that experience too. I mean, it just all the pieces came together appropriately, and it's a good thing.
I normally don't answer the curveball question, but I'm actually going to answer it. First of all, I think the story of meeting the Gomez Sanchez family and how Micallef was born is simply magical. It's fantastic. It writes itself. It's an incredible story to the beginning of what will hopefully be a long and storied tradition of an amazing brand that you guys are both working to build. And I don't know Al as well as the two of you, but what I do know of him is I completely agree with you. I think that this is a man who, when he has a vision on something, he will find a way to do it. And I firmly believe that Micallef would exist today. Would it look differently? Absolutely. Certainly would taste differently, right? Different cigars, different manufacturer, perhaps, but it would. I think it would exist very similarly as it does today, because this is a man of incredible drive and incredible success and whatever he set his eyes on. And I think he understands a lot about the industry while not knowing much about the industry when he first started, which is incredible. What he's built, along bringing on amazing folks that we've been mentioning tonight, like the two of you and Amanda and Sam and, AJ and Brandon and all these folks and Jared, who you guys have all mentioned tonight, and all the countless others as well. So I think again, I'll answer my own curveball question. I think it would. And my hope is that you two would find your way to working for it, because it's clear to see that you guys have built something incredible. And I want to quote one of my incredible audience members tonight, Quentin Thornation, who's been a loyal supporter of mine since I first started this show at Lozona just a few years ago. And he was there for my very first episode, and he's hung in for virtually all 137 takes. Quentin, I know that you've been there. And so I would definitely want to give credit where credit's due. He says, I'd have to say, this is a direct quote from him, I'd have to say, and I follow a lot of cigar brands, which he does, I know for a fact, but you guys, being you and Andy, Dan, and the Micallef team, are doing some amazing off-the-wall things that actually make sense. It's almost like, why isn't everyone else doing this? And I think that's a great way to end tonight's podcast and tonight's interview. As crazy of a roller coaster as it's been, and I think it's exactly what you guys are shooting for. You guys have converted some folks tonight, in my audience that may have not have had a chance to have some Micallef cigars. Dan, I think you completed a business deal earlier on, if I was reading and following the chat along well. But I think it's very exciting what you guys are doing and putting together, really following through, putting out a mission statement's always very bold, but following through on it is even bolder. And I think you guys are doing your very best to deliver on those promises that you made in early 2020. And even with the greatest curveball in the world being thrown at all of us in the middle of with COVID-19, you guys have really taken each and every challenge and you've really overcome it. So from a cigar media perspective, very impressed. From a retail perspective, I feel, it's something that I think is something that a lot of retailers can get behind. And as a consumer, it's exciting. It's exciting to see this engagement from a cigar company. So congratulations to the two of you. Congratulations to the company of Micallef and Al, and again, the incredible team that you guys have all built together. So I want to thank you guys for hanging in there, for co-hosting with me while I was, held at bay from the technical gods, shall we say. But it's been a fun and interesting night, and I wish you the greatest success as 2020 concludes and beyond, as you guys continue to build this incredible brand. So thank you very much for your time this evening. I just thank you very much for joining me tonight. So for all of our audience members as well, I really do appreciate you all for hanging in. What an incredible ride it's been tonight, and what an incredible ride 137 takes has been. We're going to keep marching forward, and we've got some incredible guests coming up as well. And I was completely remiss, Dan, that I did not mention the fact that you are a two-time guest on ELOsoFumarTakes. I mentioned doubles and triples earlier a moment ago. You are a two-time guest now. You were on Take 115 with some amazing perspectives from some other brand owners. Benjamin Holt and Bradley Rubin joined us that night to talk about what was going on with COVID. And I'm in the spirit of Cigar Coop being rumor free and teaser free. You and I have talked about this concept. We'll definitely iron out the details, but the plan is in early 2021 to bring back you and Brad and Ben to kind of do a recap on what was in the very infancy of COVID-19, to see how everything kind of panned out and where it actually stands at that moment. So it'll be interesting to look at back a year in review, see how perspectives from the three of you have changed and everything. And I'm excited to explore that with you guys as well. So again, thank you both for joining me tonight. Thank you to our audience for our 137th take. Really appreciate all of our sponsors, all of our comments and likes and shares. If you are a subscriber of this show, wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to download, subscribe. Please leave a review. And if you already are a subscriber, please unsubscribe, but don't forget to resubscribe. That helps me, my numbers, and helps me continue to bring on amazing guests like Dan and Andy tonight. So really appreciate everyone. For everyone out there, my name is Bear Duplessis, live from the HF Barcelona studios of Euless, Texas. This was our 137th take. And guess what, everyone? We'll see you next time.